committee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. Today, the Rules Committee is convening to consider two measures, H.R. 4553 and H.Res. 668. H.R. 4553, the Energy and Water Development and Related Agencies Appropriations Act 2026, provides substantive funding for our nation's nuclear deterrence, national security posture, infrastructure, and the broader economy overall. This legislation further cements our commitment to fortify American energy, lower cost, and advance power to the nation that is as affordable as it is reliable. The nation, and especially the American people, deserve this. H.R. 4553 supports one of the largest commitments to expand mining production technologies for critical mineral extraction in decades. It provides continued funding for cybersecurity efforts that will secure a more resilient and reliable electric grid for all Americans. It takes a calculated and measured approach to halt foreign adversaries from accessing technology, natural resources, and defense capabilities that make America strong. And this legislation makes a deliberate effort to safeguard the tax dollars of hardworking Americans from being spent on the outdated, misguided priorities of the previous administration. It is abundantly clear that we need to advance H.R. 4553 to build upon our nation's return to energy independence. H.Res. 668 directs the Oversight Committee to continue its work in investigating and obtaining relevant documents related to the Epstein files. So far, the Oversight Committee has issued subpoenas on a bipartisan basis and has collected tens of thousands of documents from the Department of Justice. Chairman Comer has been conducting and leading this investigation with openness and diligence. It's how Congress is supposed to operate. We should all take note of how quickly the DOJ has responded to these bipartisan subpoenas. When was the last time anyone can remember the DOJ, under any administration, responding to a subpoena in less than a month? Our Democrat colleagues have a unique opportunity here in the Rules Committee today. So unique, in fact, that they can join Republicans in a spirit of bipartisanship. They can support, as Republicans intend to do, the Oversight Committee's continued work to investigate and publicly release the Epstein files. Now our Democrat colleagues will predictably say that legislation is a distraction. And if they don't want to support transcribed interviews, more documents being obtained, and the bipartisan work of the Oversight Committee, it will be rather intriguing. See, their newfound interest in the Epstein files, and yes, it's entirely newfound, will be brought into even more question. They didn't say a peep the last 4 years when they had the opportunity to release the files. They did nothing. The only reason why they've latched themselves to the Epstein files as of late is because they see it as a politically advantageous opportunity. Let's see what they decide to do. With that, I yield to the ranking member, Mr. McGovern, for any comments he wishes to make.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and it's great to see you and my colleagues on the committee. So here we are again, more Republican measures written for and by big oil, big gas, and big mining for polluters, not people. A deeply partisan energy and water funding bill that will jack up costs for American families while giving China the advantage in clean energy. And hanging over it all is a looming Republican-made shutdown. We are supposed to be here to do the people's work, fund the government, keep our water safe, make energy affordable. Well, let's be honest, this majority has one obsession: burying the Epstein files. That's the through line. Every delay, every diversion, every broken promise, all comes back to the same thing: protecting the powerful instead of telling the truth. We saw it before the August district work period. You voted against transparency again and again. voted against releasing the Epstein files again and again. Then you guys rolled out a laughable resolution by my good friend, Mr. Norman, a press release dressed up as a bill, a resolution which didn't even have the force of law, and then you guys skipped town without even ever voting on it. Republicans paraded around a fake resolution, but never voted on it because you never planned to vote on it. It was completely fake, concocted to make it look like Republicans were doing something. And here you go again, another fake resolution that literally directs a committee to do what it was already doing. Republicans are trying to kick the can down the road even more, telling Oversight, keep looking into it. Give me a break. Translation, you want a congressional committee to slow walk the release of just some of the files. At this point, Republicans should just admit that you're covering for your rich and powerful friends. It's that simple. This isn't complicated. And even while Republicans stall, even while they try to distract, Republicans continue to break promise after promise. Remember the Speaker's big promise? No August recess until all the appropriation bills are done. I'm quoting him directly. Well, it's September, and we are only on Bill 3. 3 out of 12. 9 more to go. Another broken promise, another failure of this majority. And all the while, Jeffrey Epstein's partner in crime, Ghislaine Maxwell, magically lands in a country club prison after being interviewed by Trump's political lackeys. Trump moved his convicted child sex offender friend into cushy new digs. And can I even get a peep of criticism or pushback from the other side? This is insane. But we're instead told to focus on these absurd partisan messaging bills. That's the Republican plan. Hide the files, distract the public, protect your friends, and cover for Trump. Republican leadership thought a fake resolution would do it. They thought sending everyone home early would do it. Now they think yet another meaningless resolution will do it. Wrong. The American people aren't buying it, and neither am I. We deserve a Congress that doesn't flinch from hard truths. We deserve leaders who stand up to predators, not cover for them. We deserve real accountability, and we deserve to read the Epstein files and decide for ourselves. Release the files. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. We are in agreement on that issue. Without objection, any prepared statements that our witnesses may have will be included in the record. I now welcome our first panel, Representative Fleischman and Representative Apr from the Committee on Appropriations. Your full statement will be submitted for the record. We ask you summarize your statement in 5 minutes. Representative Fleischman, I welcome your testimony.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox and Ranking Member McGovern, and distinguished members of this Rules Committee for the opportunity to testify before you today. I am pleased to present to the Rules Committee the fiscal year 2026 Energy and Water Development and Related Agencies Appropriations Bill. This bill demonstrates our commitment to safeguarding U.S. national security, strengthening our economy, and unleashing American energy dominance in a fiscally responsible manner. This recommendation totals $57.3 billion, a decrease of $766 million below fiscal year 2025. The bill delivers strong support for our national defense and provides $25.3 billion for the National Nuclear Security Administration, prioritizing the continued modernization of the nuclear weapons stockpile and the United States Navy nuclear fleet. The bill strengthens our nation's energy security by advancing American leadership in deploying new nuclear technologies and supporting the administration's efforts to make full use of our nation's vast fossil fuel resources. This bill will reduce reliance on foreign materials and secure the full supply chain of critical minerals. The bill furthers our nation's scientific and technological leadership, providing $8.4 billion for the Department of Energy's Office of Science. At the same time, the bill reduces funding by 25% across numerous other department programs, including the applied energy technology offices, to ensure taxpayer resources are focused on the highest priority research and developmental projects. This bill also strengthens our economy and promotes public safety, providing $9.9 billion for the Army Corps of Engineers, including full funding of the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund activities and the highest priority, ongoing construction projects on the inland waterways system. Funding for the Bureau of Reclamation is prioritized to projects that increase water supply and support drought resilience. Finally, the bill includes a number of provisions to codify President Trump's executive actions to protect American values and prevent our resources and intellectual property from falling into the hands of foreign adversaries. This is a strong bill, and I ask the committee to provide an appropriate rule for its consideration. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you again for your succinctness. Representative Apter, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Fox, Ranking Member McGovern, and members of the committee. It's heartening to appear before your subcommittee, along with our very hardworking chair, Charles Fleischman, on behalf of our hardworking subcommittee, and one that tries to be bipartisan even in these difficult times. Energy and water undergird America's way of life. They are not optional, but essential to life and prosperity. Of late, we've been piercingly reminded about our subcommittee's purpose. July brought nearly double the usual number of flood warnings, the second highest in 40 years, including the tragedy that killed 117 in Kerr County, Texas. And the U.S. set new records twice this past July for peak electricity demand. Sadly, this proposed measure by the Republican majority for 2026 in the Energy and Water Bill does not meet our nation's imperative for the future. Half a century ago, our nation had a population of 148 million people. Today, it is heading to 350 million and projected to be 500 million by 2060. We must invest faster in modern infrastructure and become energy independent in perpetuity. Lowering energy costs requires modernizing our grid and securing its resilience. Doing so is expensive. This bill fails to address the reality of the ongoing cost of living crisis. Household electric bills are up 10% nationally just since January, and in some places where the AI data centers are being installed, energy prices are doubling. Just ask anybody who lives in northern Ohio, and I'm sure your states too. Meanwhile, China is investing record levels in energy. But this bill retreats from U.S. continental and global leadership. Why do I say this? This energy and water bill cuts $1.6 billion, or 47%, nearly half, from the Department of Energy's energy efficiency and renewable energy programs to support local communities and businesses. This undermines our ability to deliver more clean, affordable, and secure energy. Energy security is national security. America must lead the global race toward energy independence in perpetuity. This bill eliminates funding for the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations. Worse, it revokes $5.1 billion of bipartisan infrastructure law resources from the Department of Energy that seeds the U.S. global lead in technologies such as hydrogen and batteries. This bill dangerously shortchanges our national security. It slashes $412 million, nearly $500 million, from the Defense Nuclear Non-Proliferation Account, a 17% cut. This effectively guts U.S. efforts to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons, detect covert nuclear threats, and uphold arms control agreements that keep America safe so far. Finally, this bill includes numerous controversial poison pill riders that are too extreme to gain bipartisan support and become law. In closing, I urge my colleagues to oppose this bill. America must lead, not shrink, in the new frontiers of energy and water, our nation's future. depends on them. Thank you so very much, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Capter. Representative Fleischman, is there anything that you'd like to respond to that Congresswoman Capter said? I'll give you a chance.
Well, I thank the ranking member for her comments, but we respectfully disagree on some major things. First and foremost, this is a good bill. The Department of Energy has two very important tangents to it. First of all is the NNSA, which is the National Nuclear Security Administration. In my great district, in the city of Oak Ridge, we've had the Y-12 plant. This was actually the birthplace of the Manhattan Project. We have got to fully fund, and we do fund our nuclear arsenal through the Department of Energy, through this bill. It is so important that we do this. Our adversaries, Russia, China, North Korea, and others, are sadly working towards ramping up their nuclear arsenals. In fact, working towards triads. Ours is still the strongest, ours is still the best, but this bill takes care of that. On the advancement of energy, and I, Madam Chair, I respectfully chair the American Dominance in Energy Caucus in Congress, in which we work with Republicans and Democrats in a very strong bipartisan way to ramp up Americans' energy production and hence Americans' energy dominance. This bill articulates those key goals. We have funds in there for things like geothermal. I'm a champion of nuclear, of course, but we want to make sure that in our great nation that we not only dominate in terms of energy production, Madam Chair, we've got to win this race, because I want to see a situation as President Trump's agenda works and we bring back manufacturing and great jobs to the United States, that we have the energy to support that. And with that, I'll yield back.
Thank you. Mr. McGovern.
Thank you. Mr. Fleischman, under your bill, as Ms. Capter pointed out, Republicans would cut energy efficiency and renewable energy programs by $1.6 billion. I mean, that's nearly 50% of total funding. This would eliminate funding for clean and affordable energy and raise energy costs for families in red and blue communities alike, all while China is literally making record investments in clean energy. Talk about an unforced era of epic proportions. But this bill would also result in a $102 million cut to Tennessee, including $85 million to the Oak Ridge National Laboratory in your region. Can you tell us how many grants would be paused, reduced, or terminated, and how many scientists and other employees would be laid off due to the cut to Oak Ridge National Lab?
Well, I appreciate the ranking member's question, and Ms. Capter did correctly state her comments on the record on that. But I would respectfully point out to the ranking member on this issue, nothing will be lost, because EERE, and I'm a supporter of EERE and what it has done, as are many of my colleagues on my side of the aisle and your side of the aisle. But as we look at the Inflation Reduction Act, prior appropriation bills, and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which was passed and signed into law, there was literally, Mr. Ranking Member, so much additional funding. It would be like 10 years or so worth of funding given to EERE. They can't spend the money that they've got. So the reality is, no jobs will be lost. We will continue to support EERE, but they've got more than sufficient backlog of funds that they've yet to been able to spend. They were almost force-fed money in those programs.
Do you know how many employees across the 17 national labs would be impacted by a $1.6 billion cut to energy efficiency and renewable energy account?
My answer would be none, and they should be actually hiring some because of these unobligated funds that they have not been able to spend from this past legislation, where we actually had an overabundance of funding there.
Ms. Capter, do you share that view that this won't affect anything?
Unfortunately, I do not share that point of view, Mr. Ranking Member. We have a fact sheet that I actually will submit to your record that outlines the estimated cuts to the labs, the finest labs in the world where only U.S. citizens can work. And those reductions are estimated for fiscal year 2026, resulting in eliminating 7,700 scientists and staff. 7,700. That is an enormous number. And we know that the Department of Energy's fiscal 25 illegal changes could result in more than 3,000 lost lab jobs. This is cutting off America's best secure research that belongs to the future of this country. So these are significant cuts, and to the minds of people who, always got A+ in everything in college, with their PhDs and experience in the private sector, these are significant cuts.
Thank you. Last week, President Trump took another swing at our democracy, this time by trying to zero out nearly $5 billion in funding to foreign aid programs without congressional approval. This so-called pocket rescission strategy would cancel funding that Congress has already appropriated and has already been signed into law by the president. The top Democrat and top Republican of the Senate Appropriations Committee have already said that this move by Trump is illegal and a violation of our Constitution, which gives Congress the power of spending taxpayer dollars, not the president. And according to the Government Accountability Office, or GAO, which provides fact-based, nonpartisan information to Congress and the American people, a pocket rescission, quote, bypasses Congress's power, end quote, and is, quote, illegal, end quote. Mr. Fleischman, do you agree with Susan Collins, the Republican chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, that President Trump's attempt to rescind appropriated funds without Congress's approval is, quote, these are her words, a clear violation of the law?
Mr. Ranking Member, I don't think that question, in all due respect, is germane to the energy and water bill that is before us. That is in another bill that is before this committee, which was used to refer to as the State and Foreign Operations.
Let me explain to you why. So government funding runs out in less than a month. We need a bipartisan agreement to stave off a government shutdown.
Agreed.
Right. But Republicans are continuing to move forward, as Ms. Apr said, with an extreme partisan go-it-alone strategy that has so far only led to 2 out of the 12 spending bills passing through the House and no plan to get any of these bills through the Senate. So we all want to work together because, all of our constituents will be heard if we continue going down this road of heavily partisan bills. But when Democrats, and here's why what I was asking before is relevant, but when Democrats work with Republicans to pass annual spending bills, we expect that those laws will be followed and funding will be spent as the law says. Just follow the law. And I guess the question is, how can we negotiate with you when we can't trust Republicans to abide by spending agreements we pass? I mean, the question I asked you as to whether or not you agreed with Senator Collins is really not a hard question. It's whether or not, you think she's right or wrong. And if you don't, if you think the president could just do these pocket rescissions and not have to abide by the will of Congress, well then, where's the trust? How do we negotiate anything? I mean, if President Trump and congressional Republicans cut deals with us, but then cancel the funding we just agreed to spend, I mean, how can we have a negotiation based on trust?
Well, I thank the ranking member for his question, and since he alluded to the other body, in all due respect, I have never fully understood the United States Senate or its rules and the like. I have enough on my plate as we do in our great people's house. But I have utmost respect for the Senate as a body. But the rhetoric coming from Senator Schumer, where he is actually threatening to shut the government down, let me be unequivocal. I do not believe in government shutdowns. They are detrimental to this country. We need to have bipartisan cooperation to keep the government open. I profess and I believe strongly that the way to work through differences, as the ranking member and I have, despite our friendship, there are differences that come up. We keep talking. Right. We don't close the process. Right. If the government gets shut down, Mr. Ranking Member, it's on Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats, and the American people will be heard loud and clear.
I didn't ask you about Chuck Schumer. I asked you about Senator Collins. And I'll ask.
I don't think she wants a government shutdown either.
Ms. Apr, again, you're on the Appropriations Committee. How do you deal with House Republicans? on spending levels and on, on how the money should be spent, when we're now seeing that they're not even willing to defend what they voted for in the past. They're willing to be silent when Trump does these pocket rescissions. I mean, like, we can negotiate a good deal, and then Trump just basically unilaterally, stops funding these projects. I mean, I think what Senator Collins said is right. I mean, that a pocket rescission bypasses Congress's power, and I think the more we turn a blind eye to the power of the legislative branch, the more we weaken it.
Yes, I would just like to say, I wonder if the president even knows what some of his agency people have done, Mr. Ranking Member and Madam Chair, because some of these changes really don't make much sense. And I think if the president had a chance to review them, maybe he'd change his mind, maybe not. But essentially what happens is it's going to end up in the courts because the law is not being followed as we passed before. And I just wanted to, if I could say 15 seconds, the Chinese currently can put a car on the road and it goes 2,000 miles with one charge. I could go through so many accounts and tell you how we are behind in research we need to do. And these are the labs that produce the future, whether it's nuclear or whether it's commercial. And so I would just urge the majority, and I know I've said this respectfully to Chairman Fleischman, I think we have to, he and I want to follow regular order, but there are other people involved that don't want to follow regular order. And, but to cut the labs at this level is not in the country's best interest.
And I thank you. That's an excellent point. Mr. Fleischman, just one more time. I mean, again, Susan Collins, the Republican chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, said that attempts to rescind appropriated funds by the president without Congress's approval is, quote, a clear violation of the law. Do you agree with that sentiment? I mean, whether it's Trump or Biden or any future president,
I am deferential, Mr. Ranking Member, to not only the administration, and I do trust President Trump and his discernment in these issues, but I also trust House and Senate appropriators to get the job done. And ultimately, as the Ranking Member knows, it's going to take 60 votes in the United States Senate to affect anything.
If you vote to appropriate funds, right? Again, this is not a trick question. I mean, would you agree that the president, any president, doesn't have the right to unilaterally, revoke those funds without congressional approval? I mean, it's
a fair question. Whether Republican or Democratic,
yeah,
there is flexibility built into these accounts. And the executive branch has to deal with the day-to-day situations in the country and the world. And that's why that there is flexibility built in. So I do trust what President Trump would do in terms of these decision makings. I think our job as appropriators is to give, first of all, keep the government open. Secondly, give a framework and adequately fund the government, which I think the Republican majority can and will do. And then basically work with our colleagues in the Senate and in the White House to make sure this country is run well.
And again, I think if anybody were listening to your answer right now on the Democratic side, either in the House or the Senate, it is really alarming because basically what you won't answer is whether or not we have the power of the purse, whether we can appropriate funds, and the only way to not utilize these funds is for Congress to decide. I mean, you voted for a rescissions package. I mean, I didn't like it, but you can do that. But the idea that we're willing to say that, the president, we can't answer whether the president has the right or not the right to be able to do what he's doing. I mean, that makes it very difficult to have a negotiation. But I thank the gentleman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Ms. Fishbach, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Chairman, we know that the Americans in general are asking for us to cut. They are asking for us to have a responsible budget. They know we're in debt, and it is something that I hear all the time. And maybe you can just speak briefly a little bit about how this bill meets that demand, but also ensuring that we are funding, critical U.S. priorities.
Well, thank you. I thank my distinguished colleague from Minnesota for her questions, and I appreciate that. This bill actually does cut. It's $766 billion, I think I said in my opening statement, under fiscal 2025. So it is a fiscally responsible bill. Given the allocations that we have to make difficult decisions. There's been some talk about EERE and other programs and things like that. But what we have done, we've plussed up the Office of Science, which funds our great national labs, which I think all of our colleagues can agree are national assets. There's 17 of them. I have Oak Ridge National Lab. It increases funding for nuclear energy. So it does make decisions in terms of prioritizations while being fiscally responsible and reducing overall spending.
Thank you. And now my district, we were talking about it earlier, my district is Western Minnesota, and it is prone to spring flooding from the Red River. And we obviously, like so many other districts, rely on the Army Corps of Engineers for flood prevention and mitigation projects. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how the funding in this bill will help districts that rely on projects like that, mine and others.
Well, I thank you very much. Myself, I benefited from the Army Corps of Engineers with the Chickamauga Lock, but all across the United States, in red districts and in blue districts, let's face it, we're all Americans, there are Army Corps of Engineer projects, and this bill fully funds that. And I will say this, to the credit of this bill, it makes sense that unlike on the energy side, where we do not have community funding projects, on the water side, we do. And we have been very fair to both majority districts and minority districts to make sure that these community funding projects are spread out across the United States. So this, I would respectfully disagree with some on the other side of the aisle that would say this is a boldly partisan bill. It is not. It is a very evenly balanced bill because we are delivering to the American people all across the United States, including in the great state of Minnesota with Army Corps of Engineer projects.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the thought you put into the bill and the balance that you've created. So thank you. And with that, Mr. Chair, you back.
Gentlelady yields back. Now recognize Ms. Scanlon for her time question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, here we go again. We're hearing about the difficult decisions that need to be made in order to reduce the national debt, the deficit, coming on the heels of our Republican colleagues ramming through a massive increase in the nature of trillions to the national debt, the deficit, with their tax cuts for billionaires. But they'll use it all to justify domestic cuts to the American people. Today we're meeting to consider a hyper-partisan energy and water appropriations bill drafted by our Republican colleagues without negotiating with the Democratic members of Congress who represent almost half the country. So once again, we're faced with a bill drafted to appease the Project 2025 crowd and fossil fuel lobbyists, rather than a bill designed to meet the needs of the American people. The programs funding by this bill may not all be household words, but their impact is certainly felt on a daily basis in all of our lives, in the prices we pay for electricity, and in whether or not our homes are flooded in a big storm. So one would think that House Republicans would take these issues seriously, but one would be wrong, because instead of funding crucial federal programs, House Republicans are zeroing out budgets and loading all kinds of stupid culture war issues into this bill. Energy costs are skyrocketing across the country, especially on the East Coast, because of the Trump administration. Average utility prices have increased twice as much as inflation during this period, and that's another high cost eating into family budgets. Electric bills are costing American families more this year than last year. The president's actions are actually increasing energy costs and inflation, even though he ran on lowering prices and costs for American families. This year, the Trump White House has canceled tens of billions of dollars in investment in new clean energy projects. And just last month, Trump abused federal regulations to stop 2 massive wind projects in Idaho and Rhode Island. These are projects that would have brought tons of new electricity to the grid, lowering electricity costs for Americans across the country. People are losing their jobs, electric prices are surging, and private investment is being jeopardized because Trump and his cronies don't care about American families' bottom line. Instead, they're pandering to their oil and gas buddies and opposing anything to do with clean energy. The administration isn't focused on bringing down costs. This White House has, from day one, had two tandem goals. The first is to enrich those affiliated with the administration, and the second is to fight culture wars in every part of society, to divide people and destroy storied American institutions. Trump, Stephen Miller, Lutnick, Bessent, they don't give a damn about working families, and they don't care about the cost of living. They just want to use the power of the federal government to punish and penalize anyone they don't like or anyone who disagrees with them. Eager to play their part, House Republicans have drafted a radical partisan energy and water appropriations bill that guts any program related to clean energy. In 1 year, China installed more wind and solar power than all of the renewable energy in the United States. And China's on pace to outdevelop us in nuclear as well. Instead of embracing all of the above energy production, Republicans are gutting funding for wind and solar and doubling down on outdated and dying energy sources like coal. Just last week, on the 28th, the White House ordered that an electricity generating plant in Eddystone, PA, in my district, remain online, even though it was supposed to be closed back in May. This is the second round of orders by the Trump White House to keep older fossil fuel electricity plants online, even though they've become increasingly unprofitable, inefficient, and obsolete. At the same time, this administration has rolled back investments in cheaper, sustainable energy projects, including canceling the wind energy farms, and in the process, they're cutting both good jobs and leading to rising energy costs. It's the kind of boneheaded move that you get from a party motivated by reaction, grievance, and fossil fuel donations. If Republicans were serious about caring about American energy dominance, they'd be supporting production of all energy. But instead, they're trying to kill solar and wind to boost oil and gas because that's who their donors are. As Republicans ram this bill through Congress, the biggest winners are going to be the American Petroleum Institute and the American Gas Institute. I just don't think that's what the country needs. It's certainly not what I'm hearing from my constituents. Like everyone else, I was home this last month, and as these higher electricity bills are hitting, people's pocketbooks are really hurting. Representative Capter, you talked about how China is taking a step on us by our failure to invest at the levels we need to. Could you talk a little bit more about that? And also, I'm particularly interested in the billions that are being cut that would have otherwise gone to helping schools become more energy efficient, because I know that comes on top of some impoundment of funds just this last year that were supposed to help our schools become more energy efficient. We've seen it be really important to the bottom line in our schools that they're able to have energy efficient systems.
Thank you, Congresswoman Scanlon, for pointing those issues out. First of all, in terms of the Chinese, I would just say to all the American people, pay attention, because the amount of research and development that is being done there compared to here and the pace at which it's occurring is serious. I represent both an agricultural and a manufacturing region, and we need energy on all fronts. We can't tie our champion horse to the last century. We have to move forward. And in terms of battery technologies, for example, the Chinese are way ahead of us. I'm not recommending battery technologies, but some people like those in their cars. Half my staff does, actually. And but the Chinese are very far ahead of us. I mentioned how far they can go, 2,000 miles on one charge, and the car costs about $25,000. If they dump those cars on this market, forget it. When you look at the price of cars here. So we've got a long way to go to catch up just in that one in that one sector. We have lost our corn markets. We have lost them to Argentina and Venezuela, Brazil, that are supplying into the Chinese market, for example. And so if it were not for ethanol and biodiesel, our farmers in districts like mine, which is heavily soy and corn, would be, they'd be making less money. And it's becoming more tight for our agricultural community to eke out a profit. So we have to be mindful of the international market and use these programs to catch up to the future faster. And I don't think there's anything wrong with not wasting energy. If we can find a way to save every kilowatt, then let's do it. We were taught as kids, eat everything that's on the plate. Well, we shouldn't leave anything out. And the renewable technologies, and in my region, we're a glass center of the world. Whether it's Libby Glass, Owens, Illinois, Owens Corning, First Solar, we have domestic companies that can compete, but they're not quite as cost efficient as the Chinese are, and they dump strategically. So we need the research in order to advance the technologies rather than throttle this down when we have this fierce competition staring at us, and the tariffs won't solve the problem of invention. You have to allow the scientists and the inventors to do that. So thank you for pointing out how important that really is. And these cuts to the renewable energy accounts, energy efficiency and renewable energy, it's both things, not wasting anything. I could go into geothermal and what more we can do on that front, but I won't go into it. But we're not catching the future fast enough. And these cuts, 47%, half of the money in those accounts, that's really pushing America backwards where we can create new forms of energy.
Yeah, I think I've seen across my community folks being very eager to embrace newer technologies, both for the impact on the environment, but also to address the costs that people have right now. And we saw a huge surge when there were some tax credits available for our school systems to put solar on our schools because it would reduce their costs for the taxes for the schools, but it would also promote some environmental objectives. And labor was on board because it was more jobs there. So it can be a win-win-win if we can get the investment that we need.
If I could just take 30 seconds to say, I've encouraged every school I represent, especially at the high school level, give a solar panel to your school as your departing class gift. And maybe after 10 years, they'll really be able to do that on the roofs or get corporations to help donate that. So pointing out the schools is terribly important with the cutbacks to education and saving on some of those sunk costs of energy in the schools. And by the way, what we're inventing in our district, just so you know, we have windows now where you can plug in, they're solar windows, you can plug in your iPhone to the window. There are technologies being invented that I invite everybody on the Rules Committee to come with us to some of our labs, see the future that's being invented. Don't throttle it, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Mr. Norman for his time of question.
No questions, other than thank you for bringing this forward, to release our energy in a country that needs it now more than ever with the growth we've had that President Trump has released on this country has been unbelievable. So thank you for doing this, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. I agree with the gentleman.
Gentleman yield back. Does the gentleman yield back? Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Mr. Neguse for his time of questioning. He passes to Ms. Ledger-Fernandez. Recognize Ms. Ledger-Fernandez.
Well, it'd be nice to not be the last one on the Democratic side where I say, is there anything else you want to say, Ranking Member? But I really do want to say that I'll have some questions later. But I think, one of the things that's great about this bill, Chairman Fleischman, is the fact that there is the funding for the Navajo-Gallup water project. As you and I have discussed, is that nearly 1 in 3 families on the Navajo Nation live without running water. Families have to haul their water for miles just to cook dinner or wash their babies. When you ask children, what does water look like? they draw pictures of trucks. They all happen to be, I think, Ford, with the water tanks in the back. And this bill has continuing authorization for this funding. Chairman Fleischman at the not dedication but groundbreaking ceremony, the Navajo had a beautiful blessing ceremony. And when it came time for me to be able to speak, I pointed out how I had jumped out of a car to ask you to support this project. And they want to convey to you that when they have this dedication, they want you to come. So I hope you'll come out to Navajo to see this project.
I want to thank you for those kind comments, and I recall that very well. I did not know that the Navajo had thanked me, and I do thank the lady. Like myself, I continue to work for Native American rights in the 3rd District of Tennessee. I have very few authorization bills, but one of my bills is to actually return the sacred 76 acres to the Cherokee in my state of Tennessee. We're working with TVA to get that done. I hope we can get that done. We have a few impediments in the Senate, but I do thank the lady for working for that, and that is a very important project.
Thank you, and I look forward to working with both, and your staffs. Both staffs have been wonderful on this issue, and it's really important. And the other thing that you and I share, Chairman Fleischman, is we serve as co-chairs of the House National Labs Caucus together, because you're in Tennessee with Oak Ridge. I've got the Los Alamos National Lab. We also have Sandia Labs in New Mexico, although that's not in my district. But, you know, we understand, because of the work that the labs do, how important research and development in new energy technologies is if we're going to be talking about energy dominance. And I think you would agree, right, in the general statement that to diversify our energy sources, we have to continue to invest in research and development so that the United States doesn't lose ground to China. You agree with that general statement?
I do.
Yeah. So I guess, given that we share this concern, and I heard the ranking member's statement just now and earlier about how cutting the research and development and cutting EERE is so bad for that challenge, for meeting the energy dominance. And you, earlier when you were, when Ranking Member McGovern was pointing out the massive amounts that Tennessee and Oak Ridge National Lab are estimated to lose if this bill becomes law, that's $102 million. Is that correct for Tennessee? That's a 55% cut, Chairman?
Well, I would point out, as I did to the ranking member, I'd point out to the gentle lady that because of, first of all, I support EERE, but we have actually increased in this bill over OMB's request funding for the Office of Science, which funds all 17 of the great national labs, including Los Alamos. But I would respectfully state that the overabundance or backlogging of funds from those other largest bills that were previously passed that I alluded to have literally given these programs up to 8-10 years worth of funding in one shot. They can't spend all the money that they were given in that. So there are some reductions, but I do not see any reductions in staff. As the gentlelady knows, most of the national labs are contract employees contracted to DOE, like at my reservation, the University of Tennessee, and Battelle runs my lab. I think actually Battelle and I believe it's Texas A&M runs your lab, I believe, at Los Alamos. But they do a very good job, by the way.
So Sandia Labs is cutting 400 people. It was in the newspapers today because of the anticipated cuts of what's coming down. So people are losing their jobs. And I think that that's a major concern, that to cut 56% of funding, you cannot cut 56% of funding and say that we're not going to lose jobs. And I think that the other part of this is we want to bring down electricity costs. And right now in Tennessee, electricity has gone up 12%. And these kinds of, we need to invest in the range of activity and not single out things like wind energy, which has such low cost of electricity. I think the project that Trump cut was going to be 7 cents a kilowatt hour. So I think we need to make sure that when we talk about energy dominance, it includes all forms of energy and that we bring down energy costs. And I think that's one of the things that you were trying to get at. Is that correct, Ranking Member?
It is, and we can't afford to waste any kilowatt. And we need more than one type of energy production, whether it's fuels for vehicles, whether it's the way in which we heat and cool our homes, our factories. We're discovering, it is amazing what we are learning now about geothermal energy. And the chairman and I both support the tax credits that have been extended for that sector. But we have to play the energy piano on all keys. And I think what's sad, what you're talking about, the cuts in the labs are significant. Lawrence Berkeley, a 61% cut in this budget that's being proposed. If you look at Argonne, 54%. I mean, that's like, really, we needed to strengthen the labs. We're on that curve to do that. And now there's this downward slope again, going backwards. And I think that really hurts, and it hurts hiring, it hurts retention, it hurts projects, because you can't ramp up. If you were managing that project, you don't know how many people you're going to have. And there are layoffs, as you've indicated. I didn't have the number that you've stated for Los Alamos.
No, that was for Sandia.
For Sandia.
Yeah.
These are really important labs that do a lot of security work, and you don't have a steady state. You don't know where you are. You're on one of these ski slopes that's going up and down. So I think from a business standpoint, it's not a very good business model to follow. And I think that OMB, in helping to recommend all this, has really caused chaos across the agencies. And that's not what we want in our accounts, that's for sure.
No, and we want to be, the United States has always been the premier in research and science, and we need to keep investing in that because that's our future. But we also need to take care of our past. And so I am concerned about the cuts to the environmental management funding, because that goes to the legacy cleanup of the waste from the nuclear programs. And places like New Mexico and Kentucky and Nevada and Tennessee and Idaho, we have some of the mess that got left behind from the nuclear testing program. And well, we're not saying we shouldn't have done that. We're just saying we should clean up our mess, right? We tell our children to clean up our mess. So we should not be cutting the funds to clean up the sites where there has been radioactive waste. And are you concerned about that as well, Ranking Member?
Yes, I wanted to say thank you so very much for raising that more fully before the full Rules Committee. I actually represent a region of the country where we are trying to clean up legacy atomic costs that were into the strategic metals that were very toxic, that got into our rivers. When we started almost 20 years ago, when I represented this one rural county, I thought they'd be done with $5 million in like 2 years, right? It has stretched out because what happened was that the material got into the water, into the wells, and it's turned out to be a major mess that we are cleaning up. But we didn't even know at the beginning how big it was. And they're still protecting the edge, the Army Corps especially, trying to figure out, how to stop the flow underground, because our region has so much fresh water and so many even underground rivers that can carry this material. So thank you very much for pointing that out, and I do not support the majority's cuts to the cleanup programs.
Thank you, and I think that once again, we owe it to our communities. Government has important purposes, and one is to keep our communities safe, and that includes safe from radiation and chemical contamination due to our weapons programs. And with that, unless there's something else you want to add, or either we want to add, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Leisure Fernandez. Ms. Houchin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Fleischman, I just want to say how much I appreciate your work on this bill, particularly including a project in my district for restoration and stabilization of the Clarksville shoreline. This is a project that is long overdue and absolutely necessary. It's about 50 years in the making. Under the current circumstances with one of our locks from the Army Corps of Engineers pushing water directly toward the shoreline in the state of Indiana, we've lost the George Rogers Clark home site. The city of Clarksville has had to move the roadway at least twice, and it's currently threatening a project that Indiana is investing in that area close to $140 million. So this project is absolutely critical for commerce in my district, for the future of southern Indiana. We've lost many cubic yards to the Ohio River because we have not been able to, over many years, fund this stabilization project. I am hopeful, this has been included in 2 consecutive appropriations. I am hopeful that we might finally get this across the finish line to give the Army Corps of Engineers the necessary tools to study and begin work on this critical project. So I want to thank you for that. Your leadership on it has been incredibly important to me. I do want to ask if there are any other aspects of the bill that you'd like to note that might demonstrate how we are responsibly delivering for constituents with projects like these.
Well, I thank the gentlelady for referring to that project. And once again, this is what is so great about this energy and water bill. I respect the fact that some on the other side of the dais want to call it a partisan bill. This is a bill that is good for all of America. Not only the project that the gentlelady alluded to, programmatic funding for the Army Corps of Engineers is strong and robust, but because on this bill, we are able, the ranking member and I, are able to listen to requests from members, Democratic and Republican, from all over the United States. If there is something that is missed in the federal budget that comes over from OMB, we can supplement that with these community projects, and we've done that in a very fair and equitable way. And at the same time, that does not increase spending. The amount stays the same, but we are able to go in to districts and address that. But once again, the Army Corps of Engineers relies heavily on this funding. It is robust. There are areas that they come before us. They do a good job generally, but we want to make sure that we can continue this funding to complete your project. And projects like mine, the Chickamauga Lock in Chattanooga, this was a New Deal era lock. I was actually listening the other day to President Roosevelt when he launched this lock in the very early 1940s. His audio there, that lock is now antiquated, it's old, it's broken. We're building a new one. And I think the American people really can take solace in the fact that that is really what the spirit of this bill is on both the energy and water side. And I thank you.
Thank you. And I'm glad that you mentioned the lock and dam system specific to the Army Corps of Engineers because the district runs along the Ohio River. Our commerce relies heavily on a functioning lock and dam system across the Ohio River. And our funding in this bill for the Army Corps of Engineers helps ensure that commerce can keep moving. We can get products out of the United States through the river system and our inland waterways, and that we can do so efficiently with no delays because the cost of a closed or malfunctioning lock is substantial if that commerce has to be shut down. So I thank you for your work on this bill. I look forward to supporting it on the floor. Thanks for your leadership and support for the Clarksville shoreline.
Thank the gentlelady for her kind words. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Houchin. Mr. Neguse, you're recognized.
I thank the chairwoman. Good evening, I say good afternoon, to Chairman Fleischman and Representative Apr. I'm grateful to both of you for being here for your respective testimonies. I would echo the concerns that were articulated by my colleague from New Mexico with respect to, in particular, the remediation and cleanup costs associated with nuclear waste and the fact that this budget zeroes that out. But I guess I know you've had a very robust conversation with my colleagues, it sounds like, especially with our ranking member. about the energy efficiency and renewable energy program cuts, Mr. Fleischman. And I wanted to kind of follow up on that and maybe just to put a finer point on it. I'm trying to understand your rationale for the cuts to the energy efficiency and renewable energy programs. Because as I understand it, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the EERE program is going to sustain nearly a 50% cut in your bill, right?
As it is written, because as I alluded to in my answer to the ranking member, the previous bills that have been passed and signed into law by the last administration have fully and in fact respectfully overfunded for about 8 to 10 years. It'd be like if you had an annual budget for EERE. And by the way, I'm one of Congress's strongest supporters of EERE and ARPA-E, okay? They will sustain cuts under this budget, but it will be higher than what OMB had asked for. So we did actually increase that. But they've got such a backlog of funds, unobligated funds that they can't even spend. They had so much. So what happened with these big bills that I did not vote for, but they are law, they overfunded and overgorged, if you will, these very fine agencies with funds that they can't spend. So when we had to make very difficult choices, the reason is, yes, did we reduce it? We did, but we certainly did not zero it out. And there's more than enough money there for easily a decade in these programs.
So I think, and I'm not suggesting you zeroed out that particular program, and I appreciate the context that you provided. My understanding is that year to year, so compared to the last fiscal year, this program is being cut by 50%. That's by your math. I mean, that's not for debate, right? So I understand you're
correct.
talking about prior years. I get it. I hear what you're saying about the historical funding of the programs, but year to year, it's getting cut by 50%. So running the numbers in Tennessee, because as Representative Ledger Fernandez mentioned, you of course have a very prominent laboratory in your district, as I do in mine in Colorado, Oak Ridge, of course, in Tennessee.
Yes, and the gentleman's lab is an outstanding lab as well.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And we're fighting, tooth and nail to protect it. This bill would amount to about $100 million, $102,170,000 cut from the fiscal year 2024 level for Oak Ridge.
Well, so that I can delineate, the gentleman first referred to EERE, but for the Office of Science overall,
Correct.
We have increased funding in this particular bill from where ONB was. So the 17 national labs, ERE is a good program. Other programs are very good.
But using OMB as the baseline, I mean, I understand maybe that's an argument that might be compelling with some of your colleagues on your side of the aisle. I would say with OMB's proposal, you're talking about the president's skinny budget, which basically decimates federal science programs in the United States. Using that as the baseline and saying, well, listen, we didn't eliminate these centers or programs entirely, as Russell Vought and OMB want us to do. Instead, we've simply taken this 50% haircut to the the EERE programs. I guess my point here is, my argument would be that, respectfully, my colleagues on their side of the aisle can't have it both ways. Either these are cuts that are going to have an impact in your district and in districts across the country, potential folks who may be laid off, right, leave these agencies by virtue of the substantial budgetary cuts that you all are making, or they're not. And in my view, I think it's pretty clear this is going to have a fairly sizable impact on the EERE programs that are administered by the Department of Energy. But
see, and that's where I would respectfully disagree with the gentleman because of, again, in referring to the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which I did not personally vote for, but became law, okay? There was such a large infusion of federal dollars to these programs, particularly ERE, they could not spend the money. It would be like having somebody just have a big feast just dropped at the table. They've spent some of them, but they can't spend all of that. And then in looking at that, as we had to make difficult choices, was there a reduction in the funding in an annual year? Yes, but they've got dollars they can't spend. And I would just caution, and I've spoken
why would
with,
that be a difficult choice?
because there's so much money there. If you can't spend the money you already got.
No, but why would that be a difficult choice for you? I guess I'm saying that's what at this point I'm sort of making is it's either if your view is, listen, I guess what you're saying is if we went to the folks at Oak Ridge and asked them, they would say, we can't spend this money. We don't need the $100 million that you allocated. We want you to take it. That's not a hard choice for you to make.
Only in the EERE account and context, but there are other multiple spending accounts we are plussing up with Office of Science funding. So you've got the Office of Science. EERE is part and is one program, but they're overfunded, if you will. But you're right. They can't spend those dollars, but they would take dollars and have gotten other dollars, as is your lab in Colorado for key projects.
And that has no ideological component. It's not by virtue of you or perhaps your colleagues opposing the underlying programmatic investments that the energy efficiency and renewable energy programs that are implemented. The fact that you voted against these in the Inflation Reduction Act obviously animates some of this. It's not that you're just picking these out of a hat and saying, oh,
once that became law and those funds were available and applied, it changed the, if you will, respectfully distorted the entire funding formulas. And that's why, as the ranking member alluded to in her testimony, we want to get back to what we call regular order. I believe the Congress, the House and the Senate and appropriators ought to be able to do that on an annual basis. These largesse bills just basically force-fed so many of these federal dollars to programs that they couldn't spend and still can't spend. So that's how we now as appropriators have to go in and fix that imbalance.
well, I'm happy to yield a minute to the gentlewoman here from New Mexico.
I think that it's important to recognize that where we are at in the United States and where we are with regards to looking at energy independence using all of our resources is that we need to play catch up. And this isn't largesse that wasn't going to be spent. This was going to be spent. There were projects that were intended, that were being looked at. There were projects across the country that are being looked at for it. This is intended to help people save money in their electrical bills, save money with regards to resiliency. These are projects that have jobs and they have benefits. And so it's not largesse, it is investment. And I think that that's a real different way of looking at this. It is investment so that China doesn't eat our lunch, which they are doing right now with regards to renewable energy.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the gentleman. I'll conclude simply, maybe perhaps channeling my friend Mr. Roy, who may be here a little bit later, or even Mr. Norman, because I think maybe he might agree with me on this. Maybe I'm wrong. My point, simply, Mr. Fleischman, is that I think some of your colleagues on the other side of the aisle, on the other side of the aisle, in your caucus, would be very perhaps proud to say that these programs should not be funded, and that therefore these cuts are, in their view, the prudent course, because they don't believe that we should be investing in these kinds of programs along the lines of what Representative Ledger Fernandez described. What you're saying is very different. I mean, essentially, what you're saying is, well, no, it's not a matter of whether or not I agree or disagree with the propriety of these projects or the necessity for these investments. They had too much money, they can't spend it all, and so we're just going to claw the $100 million back. And I just don't. We'll dig into this further. We'll have a fulsome debate on the floor. I don't think that is accurate in my view, but we'll have an opportunity to hash that out on the floor. So without getting back and forth into it here, I'll yield back to the chairwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Neguse. Mr. Langworthy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, we've heard some wild claims from our Democratic colleagues about H.R. 4553, but this bill delivers the investments that we need to strengthen American energy dominance, modernize our nuclear security, and reduce our reliance on foreign adversaries. We are not abandoning innovation. We are prioritizing technologies that actually deliver results for taxpayers. Nuclear, geothermal, water supply development, while cutting the wasteful Biden-era programs that have not lowered energy costs. Chairman Fleischman, you have been a strong champion for American energy in your position on the Appropriations Committee. Can you explain how this bill's focus on nuclear energy and critical mineral development helps keep costs down for families while ensuring that America stays competitive with China?
I thank the gentleman for his question. And once again, This is such a good bill for America because what it does is it looks at our energy needs. We need more energy in this country. There is a dearth of energy. If you look at how our demands for future energy are going to explode, and that's a good thing because that means manufacturing is coming back to America. Our country is growing in many ways, but we're going to have to make sure, and this bill does that, to have the proper funding of programs and opportunities from a technological standpoint, and also to make sure that we take something like new nuclear energy. American technology, and we are in a competition with China. We are in a competition even with friends of ours like France and South Korea to develop these technologies. Generation 3 and Generation 4 American technologies for new nuclear reactors is growing. These are the smaller, easier to build, easier to license. Their output is not as large as the large plants. I'm a big fan of the large plants. We're bringing back some large plants in Michigan, in Pennsylvania. We're bringing back another large nuclear power plant. But our needs are going to be staggering. This bill does a lot on critical minerals. The Chinese control over 90% of that. And our great national labs are doing tremendous research to try to look for some type of substitutes sometimes for those. But where there are not, it makes an unprecedented investment in minerals so that America can get back its strong domestic critical mineral supply. So important. If we lose this to China, we've lost. So the bill does that. Now, I would also say this. It looks at the entire energy portfolio, nuclear, natural gas, fossil fuels, solar. It does not neglect renewables, but it's got to make economic sense. As our great utilities have come to me and told me, I want to make sure that we work on nuclear, Mr. Fleischman, but whatever we choose, we can't triple people's electric bills. So we are doing in this bill what I think is important for the American people, keeping their costs low while focusing on abundance.
Well, yeah, and I also want to highlight that this bill makes some common sense national security improvements, like going after and prohibiting the sale of crude oil to China and blocking Chinese Russian nationals from accessing our nuclear facilities. And with that in mind, Chairman Fleischman, can you talk about how these provisions strengthen our national security and make sure taxpayer dollars are not used to benefit our adversaries?
Well, I thank the gentleman. One of the things that in my lifetime, and by the way, I remember when we were dropping you're a little bit younger, our thermostats to 68 and turning off lights. I still do that. This was in the early 70s. Those big, beautiful cars went away. We used to have an old Oldsmobile 98. The world changed then, but I was literally taught in school that last barrel of oil was out there somewhere and it was going to be gone in 30 years. Thank God they were wrong. We have discovered in our great nation, as a resource, tremendous oil and natural gas reserves. And I believe we need to take advantage of that, develop that, and use that for abundance, for energy dominance, and to keep consumer costs low. So I think it's so important that we develop the resources, the God-given resources that we've got in this country, at the same time continue to develop other technologies. But we've got the oil, we've got the gas, we've got the technologies. We just need to basically grab that mantle and lead, because China, Russia, and other countries, including some of our friends, the French are moving ahead in nuclear ways. I met with their nuclear minister at the ambassador's residence. We talked through things. They've made tremendous strides, and we can learn from their technologies, and they can learn from ours.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Fleischman, for all yours and the committee's work on the bill. I appreciate your work in bringing us a bill that truly advances American prosperity and also keeps in mind and protects our national security. It sets a responsible course for energy policy and infrastructure investments while making sure every dollar benefits the American people. And I'm proud to support this measure. I look forward to its passage, and I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Scott, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman Fleshman, I'm not so sure that after your comments, you haven't convinced me you should have cut it further. But I just want to, when they did the infusion of cash with the American Rescue Plan, that they put that money directly in the agencies, correct?
That's correct.
So they did not use Congress's Appropriations Committee.
And that's one of the main reasons, Mr. Scott, my great classmate, along with Mr. Griffith, we're both from the same class. The reality is that's why I voted against that.
Yeah.
They totally abrogated the appropriations process with these big bills. They took us away from regular order.
And
You're
so
right.
we're doing the same thing to reduce federal spending that they did to increase federal spending effectively by using the executive branch that they put all that money in and let the executive branch determine how they were going to spend it without regard for the Congress or the will of the people. And now we're trying to get federal spending back to pre-COVID levels on our side, which is what the federal budget can support. But the $2 trillion deficit needs to go away. We have $37 trillion in debt. And let me say this, I'm disappointed. I know we have debates and disagreements, but I will tell you, it is disingenuous for the Democratic Party to say the Chinese are eating our lunch. What the Chinese do is steal. That's what they do. They don't develop technology, they steal. And they fund the groups in this country that create problems for our permitting and increase the cost of doing business inside the United States of America. That's what the Chinese do, okay? And so with respect to the ranking member, their vehicles don't go 1,000 miles on a charge. They go 1,000 kilometers on a charge, which is about 600 miles. The ones that go further than that are actually hybrids, which y'all did not support, which you should have when you were putting all of the money into the battery-powered vehicles that you wanted to use. I'm sure Elon Musk appreciates it, by the way, what y'all did for battery-powered vehicles. But it's not 1,000 miles. It's 1,000 kilometers. If you look it up, it's about 600 miles. The ones that go further than that are hybrids. They're hybrids, which is what we should have.
Sir, since you called my name, Congressman
Fine.
Scott, on the issue of automobiles, I come from the heart of automotive America. We know what the Chinese are doing, and they are ready to dump here, but they're not allowed to yet. So all I'm saying is we have to be the most efficient in the automotive sector, and that's an hour speech I don't want to give. But the Chinese are absolutely poised, including price sensitive. I mean, a vehicle that'll cost $10,000 to $25,000. We're not going to let them in the country, but we are not poised to beat that. We are.
Are you maintaining that they have vehicles right now today that go 1,000 miles?
I do.
On a single charge?
I do.
I think if you check your facts when you return,
We'll submit it to the record.
I'm just saying I believe you're wrong. I believe you're wrong.
Well, I believe you're incorrect,
I'm not accusing you of
sir.
lying or anything like that. I'm saying I believe you're wrong. I think that if you look it up, it will be 1,000 kilometers and it will be 600 miles.
We will submit it to the record.
I don't need it submitted to the record. I'm just, but where the Chinese have been very creative, and I'm not sure that this bill addresses this, they don't control the minerals. They don't control the mining of the minerals. They control the processing of the minerals. And where the environmentalists have done tremendous damage to our country is by creating a scenario under which we can't get the permits to do the processing of the critical minerals. Now, my question for you, Chairman, is what in this bill is going to help us get around the permitting so that we can actually do the processing of the critical minerals? There's critical minerals in Australia, there's critical minerals in Africa, there's critical minerals all over the place. But it is the processing where we as America have been locked down on this issue.
To be candid on the permitting, this is an appropriations bill. We are funding these key initiatives.
I understand that.
And so I think it would be a bit disingenuous for us to attempt in this bill to address permitting. We'd rather leave that to the authorizers, but I would agree with the gentleman.
The permitting can be done through the agencies, but I just want to make this clear. There is a difference in getting the mineral out of the ground.
Absolutely.
And the processing of the mineral. And where the Chinese and I'll say this way, and I hate to give the Chinese credit for this, but where they're winning is on the processing. You have plenty of minerals in Australia. You have plenty of minerals in Africa. You have plenty of minerals in the United States. But the environmentalists, who I believe are funded by the Chinese, create tremendous barriers to us. And if we're not able to actually process the minerals and turn that raw mineral into something that's actually usable, then it doesn't matter if you pull it out of the ground or not.
Understood.
Will the gentleman yield? I'd love to comment on that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I come from a region of the country that is manufacturing America, where we process a lot of materials other places don't. So, for example, with beryllium or beryllium copper or titanium, magnesium, all of them. And I was at the fossil fuels lab in the state of Pennsylvania, and where they were actually taking coal and finding a higher use for coal by decomposing it into various minerals that are in coal that they're hoping would get a greater price per ton.
Would you acknowledge that coal is where China gets the majority of its energy?
I don't, well, they were,
Coal
yes.
is where China gets the
Yeah,
majority
they
of their energy,
pollute.
so let's not give them too much credit for being a clean energy mecca.
Well, I don't give them credit for that. But anyway, my point is that you are correct in being concerned about strategic minerals. And I think that in our country, we're doing our best to not only mine them, but to process them. And it happens in districts like ours. We are short on some, and China has gone around the world and bought up a lot of supplies.
How long would it take you to get a permit in this country to build a processing facility for critical minerals?
Well,
20,
all I know is the
30
companies
Like after the
that
next
I
World War,
represent
maybe?
already have them, sir.
I disagree with you on that. I'm over my time, Madam Chair. But it is the processing of the critical minerals that this country better start taking very seriously and paying attention to. I yield.
Mr. Griffith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I found it somewhat interesting that some of my colleagues have said that we should follow the Chinese on wind and solar, and yet we should not follow the Chinese when it comes to coal. My colleague, Mr. Scott, just mentioned that the Chinese use an awful lot of coal. They're building coal-fired power plants left and right, and they don't use the cleaner technologies that we have developed in this country. And the bottom line is that my district, when I was a much younger person, had the third or fourth lowest electric rates in the country. And our electric rates have gone up in large measure because we have banned fossil fuel. And the truth of the matter is, whether they're funding the environmentalists or not, the Chinese don't want us to use our fossil fuel resources. We have the most coal. In my district, stretches over a little bit into West Virginia, maybe a little bit into Kentucky. We have a seam of coal that is the most volatile, meaning it produces the most energy of any coal in the world. We have the best coal, we have the most coal, we have the most natural gas, and we have a whole lot more oil than China does. Of course, the Chinese don't want us to use that asset because it gives us an edge. If we were to actually use all of our resources, it gives us an edge in the AI race. And that's why they don't want us to use it. And so they're perfectly happy moving towards these other things. But if we're going to follow the Chinese on wind and solar, we should take a look that they don't rely simply on wind and solar. They don't rely on renewables in order to power their industries. They are relying in large measure on coal. And so I think it's something that we need to be aware of. And if we're going to talk about the Chinese, we have to talk about that too. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. And once again, when we were alluding to the wonderful, vast resources we have in this country, whether it's coal, oil, natural gas, we are blessed to have that in this country. And the more of it we produce, the lesser the rates will be. It's simple supply and demand.
And certainly we ought to keep up, as you've mentioned earlier, with the French on producing the small modular reactors. And my district doesn't have any. We want some. But 6 or 7 miles, maybe 10, outside of my district, we have BWXT that makes all the nuclear reactors, which are basically small modular reactors for the United States Navy. And then not too far from your district and in between yours and mine is Irwin, Tennessee, where BWXT also does a lot of stuff. And then, of course, you have the other issues in your district as well. And then, if I might, Mr. Chairman, just briefly state that I'm so pleased to hear you talk about the Army Corps of Engineers and how they're fully funded. We have lots in the mountains of Western Virginia. We have lots of flooding issues. And my district is so long and so large that I work with, my team works with 4 different Army Corps of Engineer offices. Norfolk, Huntington, West Virginia, that's Norfolk, Virginia, for those who don't know. Huntington, West Virginia, Wilmington, North Carolina, and Nashville, Tennessee, because my district stretches so far west. In fact, they often talk about Lee County is closer, I think, to 9 state capitals than it is to Richmond, Virginia. So I appreciate the fact that that's fully funded and aggressively funded, because my folks need it, not just for flooding issues, but for water programs and sewer programs and others. But we do, in the mountains, you get a lot of this, you get a cloud burst over a small valley in between 2 mountains, and all of a sudden you've got a small area that's flooded, and we need a lot of work there. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate it and yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. Mr. Jack, you are recognized.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I echo many of the comments some of my colleagues have made. First, I want to thank you, Chairman Fleischman, not just for working with me to solve some problems within my district, but also, as you know, perhaps some on the committee do not know this, but as I was thinking about running for Congress, your advice was advice that I sought, and were it not for some of our conversations, perhaps I would not be here. I would blame you. So I'd welcome an opportunity just as we close out this panel. One of the things that struck me from your opening comments, and something as I keenly follow the progress of this bill, I would love for you to highlight why, first off, again, for the record, how much money you saved from a discretionary spending perspective and reductions from FY25. And then likewise, would welcome your thoughts and comments as to why it was so important to reduce spending as it relates to some of the government spending we've been trying to cut.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jack, and I do appreciate that, and I vividly remember that conversation, and I'm so glad that you took that piece of advice, and I'm so glad you're a part of this great body and represent a great district in Georgia. To answer the gentleman's question, we reduced overall fiscal spending down from 2025 by $766 million. So there is an overall reduction. But I would say this, within that portfolio, or within that funding, we have prioritized, I think, in a very good way for the entire country, not just red states or blue states, but for all of America. The gentleman prior to you had talked about the Army Corps of Engineers, very good and equitable funding to make sure that whether you're in California, New York, or in East Tennessee, you're going to benefit from the Army Corps of Engineers. Whether you have a national lab, as you do in my district, you're going to benefit from these technologies and these investments. So given the allocations that we've got, given the need to be fiscally responsible, we will only see 3 appropriation bills, I believe, increased. All of the other 9 will be decreased in terms of their funding. And the reality is, this is a bill that I think right now addresses the needs of the nation. And I do want to thank our Chief Executive, President Trump, for his executive orders, which have actually helped facilitate my work in doing this bill. I can fund, whether it's a national lab or some new technologies in critical minerals and the like, but without expediting and tightening up the process, as he has done, my dollars would probably go off into abeyance. We are going to target this and get America into a better place.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank both you and Representative Apter for your comments today. I also want to thank your staff. Appropriations staff is a hard job, but appreciate your staff's willingness to engage with my office, and I know I speak for all of my colleagues as it relates to our relationship with your team. With that, Madam Chair, I yield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jack. And I want to thank our distinguished colleagues from the Appropriations Committee for being here today. It's been a great conversation. I think a lot of issues raised, and I appreciate the good work that both of you do. Thank you so much. You're excused. I now welcome our second panel, Chairman Comer and Ranking Member Garcia from the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Your full statement will be submitted for the record. We ask you summarize your statement in 5 minutes. Chairman Comer, I welcome your testimony.
Thank you, Dr. Fox and Mr. McGovern. Today, the Oversight Committee met with survivors of the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Their stories are heartbreaking. What they have suffered and endured should never have happened and is sickening. They were not only victims of crimes, but were betrayed by their own government. Since 1996, let me repeat that, since 1996, the FBI has ignored tips. Then, U.S. attorneys gave Epstein a sweetheart deal to avoid significant jail time. The government simply disregarded the law and ignored the victims of these crimes. It was and is unacceptable. For the past 6 weeks, the House Oversight Committee has worked tirelessly to request documents and testimony regarding Epstein and Maxwell. We have subpoenaed Maxwell for a deposition, DOJ for documents, 10 former federal officials for depositions, the Epstein estate for documents, and agreed to a transcribed interview with Alex Acosta. This is the most thorough investigation into Epstein and Maxwell to date, and we are getting results. We have already deposed former Attorney General Bill Barr. The Department of Justice provided nearly 34,000 pages of documents and will produce more, which are being made public as we speak. When we conclude this, all those documents should be online unless we have a crash or something with the computer. The estate will begin producing documents September the 8th. That's the Epstein estate. The committee is working at an unprecedented pace and doing the work as it is supposed to be done. What we heard today is that these survivors support these efforts and support transparency and accountability, goals we all share. This resolution furthers those goals. It supports our work. It supports the release of documents. And most importantly, it achieves what the survivors want. There is no question that Epstein and Maxwell were terrible criminals. With your support and the support of the House, we can continue to do the work to provide closure and justice to the hundreds of victims. I urge support of this resolution, and I welcome your questions. Madam Chair, I yield back and thank you for being in that discussion today as well.
Thank you, Mr. Comer. Mr. Garcia, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to begin in a very bipartisan manner. Earlier today, I think both Republicans and Democrats got a chance to hear just horrific stories and to hear these incredible and brave women.
Thank you. Earlier today, we heard, of course, these horrific stories from these women who are incredibly brave and the courage that they showed to be here to share stories of sexual abuse, some of them when they were girls, young girls, I think has shaken a lot of us on this committee and reaffirmed our commitment to the truth and transparency. Now, the Oversight Committee, particularly Democrats, are going to continue to investigate the Epstein files and bring justice to the victims of these heinous crimes. After meeting with the survivors, of course, of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, we're once again reminded of the monstrous actions that they took against over 1,000 women and girls. It's important that we center their stories and work for accountability. And I want to just remind this committee and the public that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell are monsters, criminals, liars, and in no way should they be lionized or supported. And it is an outrage that Ghislaine Maxwell has been moved to a facility where she is now more comfortable. And I think it's also appropriate to say that that was also horrifying to the women in the testimony that we heard today. And re-traumatizing the victims because of this move is shameful and should never have happened in this country. When you harm innocent women and girls, you should be held accountable, and I'm hopeful that in a bipartisan way, this committee will do that. Now, I appreciate that, of course, close to 34,000 pages of documents have been released by the Department of Justice. That is complying with the subpoena, of course, that was put forward. But over 97% of those documents have already been released to the public. And I'm glad that we're releasing all those files to the American public. Most of it's already in the public record. What we need right now is full compliance with the subpoena. And the Attorney General, who once said that the files were on her desk, should release all the files immediately. There cannot be additional failures or additional cover-ups by this government that has already failed these victims now for decades. That cannot continue. We've got to follow the facts. We've got to get all the files out to the public, and we've got to ensure that there's justice for all of the victims and the girls. I also just want to add that Oversight Democrats have supported every single time there's been an opportunity to support transparency. We, of course, forced a vote to release and get the subpoena out. We will continue to take those actions. But any action that promotes transparency, we're going to support. If there's going to be a resolution, of course, it's going to come in front of the Congress to support additional transparency and openness in the Epstein files. We are going to support that. And any other committee that brings forward any other resolutions, we will support. But that does not somehow supplant the work on the discharge petition that Congressman Khanna and Congressman Massey are moving forward. We will continue to support that discharge petition, and we will support any other resolutions that come forward that also holds Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and anyone else accountable. And I'll conclude just by saying that it is our hope that this investigation takes on and leads us to the truth, and we do not care how powerful you are, what political party you're in, how much wealth you have, or how connected you are. If you cause harm to these women and these girls, then we're coming after you, and justice should be served. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Chairman Comer, would you like to respond to anything Ranking Member Garcia had to say?
I appreciate his statement that this has been bipartisan thus far. I think this is an opportunity for this committee to demonstrate that we can work together in a bipartisan way. This is a bipartisan issue. Every Republican I know in Congress wants the Epstein files to be released. Every Republican in Congress I know wants the people that were trafficking women to be held accountable. Every single Republican I know wants the government officials who were involved in any potential cover-up or blackmail operation, if there was one, to be outed and held accountable. So we're going to try to do everything we can to get this, and I think we've demonstrated that. I'm I'm a Republican. We subpoenaed Bill Barr. We subpoenaed Alex Acosta. We've subpoenaed Pam Bondi for the Epstein documents. I don't remember when I was in the minority, a Democrat chairman subpoenaed any Democrat officials in the administration. So we've demonstrated we don't care about political party. We don't care about what your last name is. We don't care how powerful you are. We want to know the truth, and we're doing everything we can. And I hope that the Democrats will work with us in this endeavor, and not politicize it.
Thank you. I agree with you, and I was in that hearing for the meeting with the victims today, and I appreciated very much, Mr. Garcia, what you said about this being a bipartisan effort and there being so many Democrat members there. But I also agree that there hasn't been this level of interest in this issue before.
Right.
I've been here a long time.
It dates back, what we learned from today, it dates back to 96. It dates back six prior administrations. So there have been many other administrations that could have released it and for whatever reason hasn't. But thus far, this administration is producing documents like we've asked, and I appreciate that.
Right. So you've stated a little bit already, information you've already received from the Trump administration after the subpoena for the records was executed, and how quickly the committee started receiving the information.
Yeah, as soon as the subpoena went out, we heard from the Department of Justice. Their attorneys started communicating with our attorneys, and they started gathering the documents, and I think we got the documents in record time. I can't remember a time when we subpoenaed the Merrick Garland Department of Justice and never got anything from them. So I applaud the Pam Bondi and the Trump administration for working with the committee and for being transparent.
And as you just mentioned, there have been times when you have requested information. I can remember I've been here 3 months, and I was on the Oversight Committee, on the subcommittee. We had a bureaucrat come in, and the chairman of the committee said, "I've asked you for 3 years to give us information." And the person just sat there and wouldn't say a word and wouldn't respond in any way. Wouldn't you rather have a subpoena in hand above everything else, even a law passed by Congress?
Absolutely.
Which can be challenged in court immediately to get this information?
Absolutely. We're doing what that discharge petition wants done. And we're 3 steps ahead of that discharge petition. We've already deposed former Attorney General Bill Barr. We've already subpoenaed the estate, the Epstein estate, for all the documents.
And
we've
you
already
said
subpoenaed.
September 8th, the material would come from them?
I'm sorry?
You said the Epstein estate is going to start producing
September
material?
8th. September 8th, they're going to produce the documents from the estate. I believe September the 16th or 19th one, Alex Acosta's coming in for a deposition. And I know that during our discussion, Ms. Crockett and Raj Krishnamurti, I believe, asked questions about what we should ask Acosta. So everybody, both sides are going to get equal time to interview Acosta on all of that. And again, the administration has complied with our request, and I think we're getting those documents, and as we speak, they should be being uploaded to a website right now.
And it's my understanding that the Massey document, the Massey legislation, asks only for information from the administration. Is that correct?
That's right.
It doesn't go beyond the administration.
Right, and we're going to go beyond it. We're already getting the documents from the administration, and we've moved way past, because that discharge petition was filed 6 weeks ago. We've already deposed, again, the former attorney general. We've got dates set for others to come in. We're downloading 34,000 pages of documents. We met with the victims today and got more names. that they said in front of, in front of the minority, and we're going to press forward with that. So we're way ahead of this discharge petition. I don't think it's necessary at all.
And and you are going to be in a very unique position of being the arbiter of any needed redactions, keeping that decision in the hands of members of Congress, correct?
Correct. And there were, one of the victims today made it very clear she didn't want her name, made public. Others said they were willing to let their names be public and were willing to testify in a public hearing. And so, that's, you have to know, you have to have, grant privacy rights to the victims. Some of the victims want their names out there and some want their names to be redacted.
And it's my understanding that was not sufficiently taken care of.
That's correct.
In the Massey legislation.
That's correct. And I also want to mention that Speaker Johnson sat through the whole meeting today with the victims, the entire 2.5 hour discussion we had, bipartisan discussion.
And what I heard from the victims was that they feel for the first time that they're being heard.
They feel that they're being heard, but they made it very clear they don't have a lot of trust in anyone affiliated with the government because they believe that their government has let them down. And the timeline of that would date over both Republican and Democrat administrations in the past.
Correct. So let me see if I can put all this together. You believe a formalized investigation by the House is the best path forward to obtain the records and disclose them to the people.
Yes.
You've made a commitment, and our resolution makes a commitment to disclose everything that can possibly be disclosed short of violating the privacy rights of others.
Yes, ma'am, 100%.
And by having the full House vote and speak in support of this investigation, it will be helpful to you in executing the mission that you're about. Is that correct?
Absolutely. If we have to go to court for something, if it's a good bipartisan vote in the House of Representatives, that only helps.
Okay. I appreciate that very much, Mr. McGovern.
Thank you very much. First, I think I want to ask unanimous consent to insert into the record the Massey resolution because you keep on saying that it doesn't protect the victims, but there's in yellow here, there's some pretty explicit language about protecting the identity of the victim, so I don't want there to be any confusion.
Without objection.
And, Mr. Comer says it's unnecessary, but this bill we're doing right now is unnecessary because you're already doing something. So I can't help but feel that this is like cover. And I got to be honest with you, we've been trying to bring, legislation to the floor. We're trying to, amend bills to try to get this administration to do what Trump said he was going to do during the campaign, and that is release all the files. We had a recess early because people didn't want to take a vote on it. And I think, I appreciate the niceties of both of you appearing before this committee right now, but I got to tell you, I think what's going on here today is the Republicans are terrified. And I think we all know why. And that is because the president doesn't want to release all the files. I mean, after promising that he would release them during the campaign, then he issued, that was in 2024, and then 2025, he says, it's all a big hoax. It's perpetrated by Democrats and some stupid Republicans. That's his quote verbatim. So when you say all Republicans want this stuff released, I don't think that guy does.
That's right.
And what you're telling us that you're going to release some of the files tonight, if I heard Mr. Garcia correctly, 97% of which is already out in public. So we get 3% that's new. I don't know what it's going to say. But I just don't understand what the big deal is. Why can't the administration just release the files? You can do the investigation, but just release all the files. Trump and the people he put in charge of the FBI and the DOJ promised that they would. And it's just kind of strange that they haven't done so yet. I mean, don't you think? I mean, we just want to know, what are they trying to hide? Why is this such a difficult thing for them to do? You know, before we left for recess, you guys all told us that you wanted to release the files and that a non-binding resolution authored by Mr. Norman was an important step forward to getting the Epstein files released. Why hasn't that been called up yet? Mr. Scott had the authority to do so for weeks. He could do so this week. Hasn't done it. I don't know why not. Maybe Mr. Norman can explain to us why his Epstein resolution never made it to the floor. Maybe Mr. Scott can tell us why, would like to share with us why he decided not to call up the rule for its consideration when it was well within his power to do so. But honestly, the answers they give really don't matter, because the resolution was nothing more than a distraction to buy time. And I think we're doing the same again today. But today's resolution is even worse. At least Mr. Norman's do-nothing resolution had a deadline of 30 days. If I'm reading your resolution correctly, there's no deadline. It's just an open-ended distraction with the same goal. Protect the powerful, hide the files, and buy some time for people to forget. So, you know, all that has to happen for the files to be released is one thing. The Trump administration needs to release them. That is all. And if that's too complicated for some Republicans to get their arms around, that's okay, because they're in luck. Someone has already done the work for them, because there is a bipartisan bill offered by Mr. Massey and Mr. Khanna that would force the administration to release the Epstein files while protecting the victims. And Mr. Comer, just for the record, I think you're not in support of the Massey Khanna bill, but let me ask you formally, I mean, do you support the Massey Khanna bill to release the Epstein files?
We're doing that as we speak. And you said some of the documents were going to be released. All 34,000 documents will be online, hopefully in the next 5 minutes, if they're not now.
Yeah, but 97% of which we've already seen. Mr. Garcia.
Yeah, I just want to add, I mean, first, appreciate the comments, but we should be clear. I mean, if it's true, as the chairman said, that every Republican supports disclosure around the Epstein files, then every Republican should sign the discharge petition from Congressman Khanna and Congressman Massey. There's no question. And the key difference in that petition as well is that petition ensures, one, that members of Congress are all on the record on releasing the files, and two, that petition, as you have in front of you, also ensures that the files actually go to the American public, that they're actually released to the public. I appreciate that the subpoena that we forced a vote on is going to our committee, and it's important work. Most of the documents that were sent to our committee, those initial documents were given to right-wing influencers back in February. The files and the full report, according to the Attorney General, were sitting on her desk ready to be released. We know that the Attorney General herself has shared with the President directly that he is also in the files. The reason, and we don't understand why this cover-up by the President continues to not release the full files. And so the discharge petition is an important additional step forward for the full Congress to be on record to release the full files. And so that piece is important. And it's clear that, well, maybe there are some Republicans in Congress, and hopefully all, that want to see disclosure. That is not the case with the Republicans in the White House and the Department of Justice.
So 7 months to get released, 97% of which already been released. But again, Mr. Comer, I mean, do you support the Massey Khanna resolution, yes or no?
We're already doing it. And let me say,
No, it's a simple
the
yes or no
discharge
answer.
petition does not have the force of law. We've already subpoenaed.
You can begin
And
by
look,
saying no, and I'll let you.
No,
you can
look,
answer, or
Mr. McGovern,
yes,
it's very
and you can answer.
disappointing that you're trying to politicize this. We're trying to get answers.
Let me
We're
reclaim
trying
my
to do
time.
everything that's in this discharge petition, but you're trying to politicize it.
No, it's a yes or no question. It's not a trick question. I mean, do you think?
We've already
do you
done
think-
what
do
the
you think
discharge
resolution-
petition's asking.
Do you think the resolution saying to keep doing what you were doing is better than a bill that can become
The
law?
bill
which would
has
excuse me,
no
I'm
force of
speaking.
law.
I have
It has
the
no
time.
force of the law.
Yeah.
You're just
No,
trying to do
we're
a
talking
political
about-
stunt.
Well, I was asking a question, he interrupted me. It's a simple yes or no question. Simple yes or no question. Do you
We're
support-
already doing it.
All right, well, that's not a yes or no, but do you think the resolution saying to keep doing what you were doing is better than a bill that can become law which would require the release of all the files.
It doesn't have the force of the law. It's just a political stunt. It's just a political stunt. You know.
This is a resolution. The counter is a Massey counter bill would become law. If all you Republicans want everything released, then, you know, you could vote for it. And then if he decides to veto it, you could override the veto.
The subpoena goes further than the discharge petition. Discharge petition is just a political stunt. Just a political stunt.
All right, so
and look, we have done everything bipartisan in this investigation. This is an opportunity. And I think most of the Democrats on the Oversight Committee want to be bipartisan in this, Mr. McGovern.
So you're not going to answer my question, but look, we're meeting here under an emergency procedure to consider this resolution, which, if I'm reading it right, simply tells your committee to continue doing what you're doing. Do you need this resolution to continue doing what you're doing, Mr. Garcia? I mean,
We don't, the resolution as presented is not necessary. Again, we want disclosure, we want the files released, but what should have happened is we should vote on the discharge petition and move it forward and then continue our work. Can I say one more thing, Mr. Ranking Member? I also want to be clear that the DOJ has not been forthcoming or presented everything that we've asked for in the subpoena. And I think it's important that even in our recent interaction with the DOJ, they're essentially now not giving us any new additional information as to when we're receiving the rest of the files. And so having Congress act and taking a vote on the full release of the files is an important additional step, which is why the discharge petition is important. And the resolution should not somehow take precedent or discourage members from somehow signing the discharge petition.
so help me understand what we're considering right now. Does this resolution grant you any new authority?
No.
I think the resolution will send a signal if we end up in court. If, as the victim stated today, there's some of the most powerful and some of the richest names in the world were involved in a cover-up, we're going to end up in court. And I think the resolution will demonstrate that Congress is working in a bipartisan manner, not trying to be partisan, to get the truth to the American people and hold people accountable.
Yeah, why don't we do both? I mean, Mr. Massey, last time I checked, is a Republican. Other Republicans will sign that. Why can't we do both?
I think we can. I think.
Excuse me, Mr. McGrath, would the gentleman yield a moment?
Yes.
We can. We certainly can do
Okay,
both.
well, let's do both.
We'll pass this resolution here, and then if sufficient people sign the discharge petition, then it will come out. And it's my understanding there is a significant difference in the resolution that we have here and the Massey resolution, and that is this resolution demands disclosure, whereas the Massey resolution does not. So I think we can do both, and let that happen. That we want to show that we want this done in a very important way.
Well, if we can do both, then why is the Rules Committee standing in the way of allowing? I'm going to have a vote on the Massey counter resolution. Well, why would Republicans of the Rules Committee block us from just bringing it to the floor? We could vote on both.
Because they've already started the discharge petition.
Well, that doesn't.
They've already started it.
Yeah, well, that's a nice. Well, that's whatever. That's I don't even want to say what I'm thinking about that answer. But let me just ask. This is a yes or no question. Does the administration have the power to release the Epstein files with appropriate redactions to protect the victims and the survivors? Do they have the authority to do that?
I think so with the subpoena.
Yes.
All right, they do. But they're not. And Mr. Comey, this resolution that is before us right now says that you're investigating mismanagement that led to Mr. Epstein's death. Mm-hmm. Who was the president of the United States when Mr. Epstein died in custody?
I would assume it would have been Trump.
Yeah. And I have another, just one last question. You referred to Ghislaine Maxwell as a terrible individual. And I guess the question is, maybe you can enlighten us, what have you done to investigate why Ms. Maxwell was moved to a minimum security facility? I mean, she's a convicted child predator, sent to prison. She testifies before some people, the administration, she didn't testify. She answers questions that are put forward by somebody in this administration. She basically says the president didn't do anything wrong, and then all of a sudden is moved to a minimum security facility. Are you going to do? Have you done a hearing on that? Are you doing a hearing on that?
We've subpoenaed Ms. Maxwell. She sent a letter via her attorneys and said that she requested that we wait for the deposition until after the Supreme Court rules on her appeal. We're hoping that's this month. So as soon as the Supreme Court rules on her appeal, we'll go in and do a formal deposition. So Mr. Garcia will be there. I'll be there if he wants to be there.
I'm not.
And those questions can be asked. Those are legitimate questions.
Well, but I don't think Ms. Maxwell can answer those questions. I mean, I listened to some of her interview, and it sounded like there was no cross-examination. I'm just curious why, after she said what she said, was she moved? So it's not about Ms. Maxwell. It's about somebody made the decision to move her, which I don't think was expected. Mr. Garcia?
Yeah, I mean, look, let's be really clear. First of all, Democrats on the committee, we did not support moving Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony after the Supreme Court heard her appeal. In fact, that was a decision that the majority made that we did not support. We think that Ms. Maxwell, before she was interviewed by Donald Trump's former personal lawyer, should have been in front of a bipartisan committee in a deposition. And so, to be clear, and I think it's safe to say that it's an outrage and shameful that Ghislaine Maxwell was moved to a facility where she is now more comfortable and has more access to folks both on the outside and her ability to move freely, when she has victimized over hundreds and hundreds of women. And I'll add one more thing to that. We've written to the DOJ, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, demanding answers, yet no response from the Attorney General. We have no idea why she was moved and at whose direction was she moved to that facility.
But she was moved, and correct me if I'm wrong, by this current administration, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think
I would think that, I mean, this is so outrageous that a big part of the investigation of your oversight committee should be on that as well. And I mean, I hope that you pursue that. But again, I mean, I think it is imperative that we pass the Massey kind of bill, because I think it does have the force of law, and because I don't trust this administration to basically. I mean, something's going on here. I don't know what, but there's a reason why everybody went from "we're going to release the files" one day to the next day saying we're not. So in the spirit of full transparency, and the spirit of demanding that they do what they said they were going to do, I think I think we need to do more than what we're doing. Mr. Comer?
Yeah, I was just told by counsel the documents pertaining to the move would fall under the Department of Justice subpoena. So I think that's a fair question that I'm confident if we don't ask it, Mr. Garcia will whenever we're.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this whole episode has been outrageous, and it's disgusting, and it's been strange, especially the way this Congress has dealt with it up to this point. And so some of us believe we ought to, we ought to also pass the Massey kind of bill, and I hope that we will do that. And I hope my friends on the Rules Committee will allow us to offer it, because I'll bring it up as an amendment. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Ms. Fishbach, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I am confused because the Oversight Committee is trying to do the investigation, trying to get the information, trying to get it released. They have been working on it most of August.
Yes.
A significant part of August. So I am confused as to why the Democrats are opposing this, because you are doing it in the way that it should be done, not some resolution added, like the Democrats attempted to in Rules Committee in the middle of, well, it wasn't the middle of the night, in the evening. But instead, this is a thoughtful way that you are handling this bipartisanly. I understand, and so I am just really confused about that. And I just want to say that I thank you for doing what you're doing, because we obviously need to figure this out in in a respectful manner. So we are protecting those victims who don't want to be publicized. We're doing it in an organized manner so that things happen in a transparent manner. And we are going to, and my understanding is you are going to disclose and publish everything.
Everything.
And so I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, but I just wanted to point out how confused I am about this, because this is just grandstanding and political theater.
Absolutely.
From the other side, because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
We want to know. I want to know. If you look at the roster of the committee, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Anna Paulina Luna, Nancy Mace, they want to know. I mean, they ask tough questions. And look, when Acosta is interviewed, there'll be some tough questions for him. He has a lot of questions that need to be answered with respect to some things. So we've not put a line down. We're only going after the Democrats. That happened in the past when the Democrats were in charge. They only went after Republicans. We want to get the truth, and it goes back. It spans 6 administrations. So look, for whatever reason, according to the victims today, and Dr. Fox was in there, Mr. Garcia was in there, they've been giving interviews to FBI and other government officials, people in various departments of justice for decades, and name names, and nothing's been done. The Biden administration had an opportunity to release the Epstein files. They didn't do it. You go back. This is something that we're committed to doing. And we want to do it. I want to be able to say the Oversight Committee, this was a big investigation. The American people are watching. I want everything out and open. So, we're trying to do it, and we're trying to be bipartisan, and hopefully my friends across the aisle, I think the majority of the Oversight Democrats are sincere and want to do this in a bipartisan way. Hopefully the Democrat leadership will let this be bipartisan and not play political games.
I will yield.
I'm confused too about something that Mr. McGovern said, that 97% of what's been released was already public information. I'm not sure why that's negative, because they keep saying that. Okay, 3% is new, but now it's all available to the public. Is that correct? Because maybe it was released to some people, but now it's released to everybody, right? So everyone can see it.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what the 3% is that hadn't been released before, whether it has any significance, but I'm confused, as the young woman from Minnesota is confused as to why are they downplaying that, or why are they saying that's a waste of time?
I don't know. It's not. And, I think all of us during August, if we went out and met with constituents, they were all asking about this. The American people want to know. They would like, I've said this in a million interviews. They want to know, who all was involved in the sex trafficking, what big names were taking advantage of those girls, and was the government involved? Those are the 3 questions, and I hope we'll be able to get as much information as possible. Look, this dates back, according to what we heard today from the victims, as far back as 96. So, let's hope that there's still documents around. I've always had a huge distrust of the FBI and the Department of Justice under various administrations. And I've always had a theory that sometimes documents don't survive from one administration to the other. We're going to do everything we can to get that information. And I think this resolution's a step in the right direction. I don't think the other thing's needed.
I thank the lady for yielding.
Thank you. But just to reiterate, I just hope that the Democrats will stop the grandstanding and really, work on the bipartisan oversight committee and making sure that these things are dealt with. I think it's a disservice to all of the victims to not work and to pretend that this is somehow bad, but focus on it and make sure, I'm asking the Democrats, make sure that it's bipartisan, make sure that you're doing what needs to be done, the disclosure's done and the investigation is done. Because this isn't something that should be about political points. This is about something that we should investigate. And so with that, I just hope that they would come with us and help with the Oversight Committee investigation.
Thank you.
With that, I yield back.
Thank you.
Ms. Scanlon, you're recognized.
And I would yield to Mr. McGovern for a minute.
I'm sorry there's so much confusion on the Republican side of the aisle. I don't understand why we're just not all demanding that the administration release all the files. And we could do that if we were able to vote on the mass counter resolution. But apparently we can't do that. And forgive me if I'm just a little bit suspicious about all this going on here, because I've been on this committee all year with all of you, and I have watched as we have weaved and dodged and avoided bringing anything to the floor dealing with this. And I've also, we began our August recess early because none of you wanted to take a vote and hold this administration accountable, and you ran out of town. So again, and want to do something bipartisan, maybe we all can join on a bipartisan appeal to this administration to find out why Ghislaine Maxwell was moved to a cushy facility after she exonerated Donald Trump. So I'm sorry. I mean, we've lived through the last several weeks as Republicans have tried to avoid dealing with this issue. And so I hope, and I trust that there's bipartisan cooperation on the Oversight Committee, and I want that investigation to move forward. But for the life of me, I do not understand why the administration, after promising to release all the files, has chosen not to. So that's what I'm confused about. I thank the gentlelady for yielding.
Thank you. Mr. Comer, I think in your introduction, just for folks who are trying to play catch up here, because there's a lot of details and a lot of names being thrown around, you said that one of the issues here is that the U.S. attorney who initially handled Mr. Epstein's case gave him a sweetheart deal. That's right, isn't it?
Was the initial U.S. attorney was who?
Well, you didn't name him, but it was Alex Acosta, right?
I don't know if he was the initial, but he was one of them. Yeah, he gave him,
So he was the U.S. attorney appointed by George Bush in
One of
Florida,
them,
whatever
yes.
district, and he's the one that gave the deal to Epstein, where he served a couple months, but basically got out on release every day, despite all the horrific crimes that we now know occurred. Okay, and in his later career, he became Secretary of Labor in the first Trump administration, right? And he had to leave after reporting disclosed this sweetheart deal. Is that right?
I don't know what caused him to leave, but.
It was about that time.
Okay.
So, Mr. Garcia, I know we've heard that you've received some materials. Are there redactions in those materials?
There are appropriate redactions. We will be able to review the full materials. There'll be some opportunity to review the materials without some redactions from the committee staff and committee members that don't put any of the victims in harm's way. But there are some, again, the reality about the materials, though, is there's nothing really with a small amount, a couple thousand pages of new information. And all the information was first given to right-wing influencers back in February, and then has been released to the public, whether it's been through the media or other ways. And so we can get the full files today. We know the DOJ has them. They're not answering our questions. We're asking, when are we getting the rest of the files? We get no response. And to clarify one thing, Ms. Scanlon, I think it was said earlier by another member of the committee that we're somehow opposing this resolution, or we're not opposing anything. We want full disclosure. If the majority wants to put together a resolution to add to more disclosure, that's fine. But that resolution should in no way supplant the discharge petition or serve as some kind of distraction to not get the full Congress on record to release all the files.
Okay. I mean, I guess I was asking about the redactions because there's been reporting that under Attorney General Bondi, hundreds of FBI and DOJ man hours have been dedicated to redacting all references to the president. So is there anything to indicate that the materials you've received thus far contain some of those redactions?
So we believe that the materials that we've received so far there are redactions in there. We are reviewing some of those redactions currently. The team still is, but we believe that again, that a vast majority of those documents are actually not presenting any new information. And we do believe there are important and critical documents that we have not yet received from the DOJ that contain important information to this investigation, and we have yet to see those.
Do you have explanations for the redactions that you have seen thus far? Have those been provided by DOJ?
We do have some explanation of some of the redactions, but there are no documents in what we have been presented that are of concern as it relates to redactions.
I'm just concerned because that is one of the pieces of the Massey underlying legislation, which is that to the extent the DOJ turned over any materials, it would have to explain any redactions or claims of privilege or whatever.
But that's important, certainly in future documents. So
Yes.
as more documents come forward, ensuring that that is a piece of it is going to be important.
And I guess going back to this issue of Ghislaine Maxwell getting this cushy assignment, my understanding is that when she was moved to this new facility, that was against Bureau of Prison regulations, and someone higher up from the White House or the Attorney General's office would have had to excuse that normal Bureau of Prison rule.
That is
right?
correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you. Anything else you want to add?
Just that I think that Republicans should join Democrats on the Oversight Committee and others in demanding answers as to why Ghislaine Maxwell was moved and who gave the orders to move Ghislaine Maxwell. We still don't know that answer.
I think that's an important part as well. And pleased to have been able to sign the discharge petition before we came up for this hearing. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Norman, you're recognized.
Thank both of you for coming. I think what's interesting about this hearing, Mr. Governor, you've been kind of very critical of everything that's been going on here and about you need answers, and some of it we do need answers on. But the biggest, and you said things were outrageous and whatnot, you're confused. What I'm confused about, you were elected to Congress in 1997, 28 years. You were chairman of this committee, the Rules Committee, from 2019 to 23. Now, if this is all of a sudden so important, when you as chairman, you had every right to bring up everything we're talking about now. What did we hear from you? Crickets. So that's the big confusion I have. And Representative Comer, the thing about political grandstanding, that's all this is.
Well, I didn't
and I don't
presidential campaign
hold on,
saying it was a
I'm
release
not
to
talking.
Epstein files.
If I've got the floor, I'll recognize you, but we're not going to talk over each other. Have some decency. This is an anti-Trump. You're asking all these questions, who released Ghislaine Maxwell? When you had the opportunity, you didn't say one word. This is anti-Trump, and it's coming out for that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this. How many victims were interviewed today?
6.
And you think it's hundreds?
They said it was hundreds, like close to 1,000, but hundreds. It's what the attorneys for the victim, the attorneys were represented by 4, the victims were represented by 4 attorneys, and they said as many as 1,000.
Well, the process is moving forward.
Right.
We all know the discharge petition.
And
I don't mind having 2 tracks. But the bottom line is, Mr. Governor knows it has to go to the Senate. I don't know what they'll do with it, but it's going to take time. You're not waiting on anything.
No.
You're moving forward.
We're moving forward.
And like Chairman Fox said, everything's going to get released. Now, let me ask you this. Are the flight logs public information? Who flew on the planes?
Okay. Some are, but the estate subpoena should cover more of that.
We all know anybody how far back with the flight logs? You can alter a flight log on an air. If you're flying on a plane, you can't.
Back to 1990.
Okay, 1990. We know people that were on that flight weren't going over there to have Bible studies.
Right.
They were doing other things. So we'll see, is your opinion, all the flight logs of whoever went, doesn't matter.
No.
That will be released.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know. I think everybody
Well,
wants to
you
know.
hit it on the head, James. I mean, people want to know the names.
Yeah.
If a crime has been committed against thousands of women, young girls, this transcends politics. That's why I don't understand. The fact that you're politicizing this is not right. This transcends. This is young girls getting abused. So the fact that the flight logs will be released, we'll know the names of who flew over there. And then the public, I think that's the big name. If crimes have been committed, who did it?
Right.
And then let them face a trial, let
Absolutely.
them face a jury of peers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think Ms. Scanlon said the redactions by Attorney General Bondi contained things with President Trump. Now, what did you say, Representative Garcia? That was not right, correct?
I think, well, first, to be clear, I think the Attorney General herself has said that President Trump is in the Epstein files, to be clear. That's been reported. And as far as what redactions include the president, we don't have the files yet to know what those redactions actually are.
But when you get the files, y'all, both of you will ask the question, why were they redacted? Who did it? And as far as who put Ms. Maxwell in another prison, I assume that will come forward.
Well, and to be clear, our request has been to redact the names of the victims. There shouldn't be circumstances, nor would we support redacting the names of the perpetrators or anyone that actually committed the harm. And so that would not be our expectation. And so we think the full release of the files is important to check that work, of course.
Okay. So so it's nothing with President Trump has been redacted to your knowledge of what's been released so far.
If anything with President Trump's name has been redacted, it has not been, it's not something that's been in anything, it's not any new information. Okay. So that has not been presented to the public.
So this just further illustrates this is just a hatred of a president who has got support of 77 million people.
I mean, sir, it's the president that actually campaigned on releasing the full files when he was running. I mean, he had made this the central issue of one of the central issues of his campaign.
Aside from that, though, you had 4 years under the Biden administration. He was chairman of a committee. He could have brought it up day one. He didn't do it. So if all of a sudden the interest, to be honest, I'm glad it's coming out now. There's been a lot transpired with Ghislaine Maxwell, the death of, I don't even know, when did Epstein die?
2019, August.
2019. Okay, so a lot's happened over the 20 years of this. Well, thank you for what you're doing. I think that the public needs to know, as they do on most everything. There are a lot of questions of the government involvement in the shooting of President Trump. I mean, that's going to come out at some point, not only Butler, Pennsylvania, but the golf course. So is there anything you want to add to what Mr. Garcia or any?
No, I just think that, the subpoena covers everything. I mean, if there are flight logs with the estate, that'll fall under the subpoena. If there are questions about why Maxwell was moved from Florida to Texas, that'll fall under the DOJ subpoena. So we are moving forward, and the Department of Justice has been working with us to turn over those documents. It takes a long time to gather and transfer 34,000 pages, and we're hopeful there's more, and we'll look at that and then post it online as quick as we can.
Okay,
Mr. Norman, would you yield for a minute?
Pardon me?
Would you yield for a minute?
Oh, yes, ma'am. I'll yield.
Sure. I just wanted to seek unanimous consent to put in the Newsweek article from August 1st of this year, so just last month, in which it talks about the fact that Trump's name was in the Jeffrey Epstein files and that 1,000 FBI agents were redacting those files to remove his name and others. So it's an August 1st, 2025 Newsweek report. It was also in Bloomberg and several other things, but I know we were on break, so you might have missed it. I yield.
Without objection.
So what she just said, y'all will be able to get into that, won't you? So you'll be able to answer every question. Now, Mr. McGovern, in fairness to you, you want to answer why, when you were chairman of this committee, you didn't bring up anything about Jeffrey Epstein?
Yeah, I mean, one is I didn't campaign that I was going to release the Epstein files.
No.
Donald Trump made it into a big issue, and then we all expected it was going to be released, and then he decided at the last minute to change his mind, called people, said it was a big hoax, said Republicans were stupid for going along with it. And so those are his words. And by the way, Ghislaine Maxwell just got transferred like a month ago. So I wasn't chairman then of the committee.
No, of 2019 to 2023, you were chairman.
I would have. Yeah, I mean, if people had brought to my attention that there was something there, I would have demanded that they be released.
The victims, no. That doesn't
Well, I
hold
mean,
water.
if the victims came to
That
us,
didn't
we
hold
would've-
water.
we are, yeah, but the victims want the files released, and Republicans have been frustrating that effort for months and months and months. And you even adjourned early to avoid having to vote on it.
That is not
So we
true.
want I want the truth out there. I want the files out there.
Taking my time back. I'm reclaiming my time. The fact is, if you had all the interest that you do now, it's just because of Donald Trump. You had 4 years to do it as chairman of this committee. You've been in Congress 28 years. You and I both know the victims. This has been out that young girls have been victimized for the last 15 years, and you did nothing, which it shows you the hatred they have, and everything's political up here, particularly when it comes to Donald Trump. But the American people don't agree with you. Thank you, both of you, for testifying. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Ms. Leisure Fernandez, you're recognized.
Hello, Chairwoman. We are back, aren't we? And we're back on Epstein, which is where we were before, indeed, Johnson shut down Congress early so we would not have to vote on a motion to put on the floor of the House the Massey kind of resolution to force the release of the Epstein files to the public, to pass a bill that would make it law that all of the files would have to be released. And there is no reason why we cannot still have that be a rule. And we can do both. But Republicans, and Trump especially, seem terrified of those files and seem willing to do all kinds of things to avoid a vote on that bill.
I know.
Now, I want to go into some other things, but I'm going to yield some time to my ranking member.
No, I would just want to respond to Mr. Norman. I knew there was some there when this administration was trying to hide everything. And that's, quite frankly, what has a lot of us concerned about what we're not doing here today, and that is not voting on the Massey counter bill. And my understanding is that there's some reporting out now, we're hearing, that the White House is calling Republican members, asking them not to sign onto the discharge petition. And I don't even know what the hell happened to your resolution that you brought up before we kind of abruptly left early for our August recess. But this doesn't smell right. I think we need to get to the bottom of this, and that means that all the files have to be released. I yield back, I thank the gentlelady.
Thank you, Ranking Member. And, I am chair of the Democratic Women's Caucus, and we are always concerned about the fact that in this country, women and children and girls are attacked, they are abused, they are raped, they are trafficked. And they are done so by men like Epstein and by women like Maxwell. And I think that it is an outrage, as you pointed out, Ranking Member Garcia, that she has now been treated favorably by the Trump administration after saying some things they liked. And what we haven't heard from you, Chair Comer, is a commitment not to say, well, it's going to be in the subpoenas, but to have a hearing on why. Will you commit to having a hearing to determine why she was moved to a more favorable conditions after that interview?
We'll have a hearing to determine the crimes that were committed. The hearing is going to be geared towards seeking justice for the victims, not scoring political points like you all want. We're concerned about the victims and their request that someone finally be held accountable, because they weren't during the Biden administration, they weren't during the Obama administration.
I'm going to take.
They weren't during the Clinton administration.
The question was whether you would hold a hearing as
we'll have a hearing.
Why she was transferred after that.
We'll have a hearing, and if someone wants to ask that question, they can ask it. You can ask any question. We'll have a hearing.
But It wasn't a hearing on what the question was. And
You want to have a whole hearing, a whole entire hearing, not about the victims, not about a government cover-up, not about human trafficking, but about Maxwell, who you all were like begging to be deposed, and I did the subpoena. Now you want to, now you're mad because she exonerated Trump. We brought in Bill Barr, who is I don't think it's any secret that he and Trump aren't best of friends.
I'm going to reclaim my time.
Well, that's
Reclaim
fine.
the time. The question wasn't about shouldn't we do all these things, but this is something very specific that indeed, as I understand, the victims raised today, they're outraged that this has happened. And it is indeed a re-traumatization when somebody who has done such horrible things is then treated favorably under these conditions. And I think that's where it's at. And I really want to thank you, Ranking Member Garcia, because you focused in your opening remarks about the horrors of what you heard today and of why it is so important for the survivors that they get justice. And it needs to come in many forms. And I think the fact that Trump doesn't want us to vote on this bill tells you a lot, right? And why are Democrats worried? We are worried because Trump keeps distracting and lying about things. Right? Anytime he doesn't like something, he distracts and he lies. He claims inflation is down, but America's working families who are paying more for energy and groceries know the truth. Our small businesses are closing because of those tariffs. Trump didn't like the fact that Americans are losing jobs, so he fired the person who gathers the data. And with the Epstein files, he's terrified of what's in those files, and he knows his name will keep coming up again and again. And it is tied to the fact that Trump himself, Representative Garcia, you know that he's been accused of sexual misconduct at least 28 times. He's found liable by a jury of his peers for sexual abuse and defamation. So we're not going to be surprised when we find out that his name has been in his files, and we want to see what they are. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I think we want to know what Attorney General Bondi told the president as it relates to his name being in the files and has been widely reported. And I think the American public they have a right to know.
Right. And I think that Americans are worried about trusting Republicans on this because now Chairman Comer is saying we're doing all these things. Had they done anything at all before Democrats forced the vote on the subpoena? Had Oversight done anything on
Well,
this
I think
before?
that's a good reminder. I mean, the vote was a forced vote by a subcommittee of Democrats on Oversight, where we got not all, but some Republicans to join all Democrats to subpoena the Epstein files. And had Democrats not taken that action, we'd have no subpoena and we'd still be much further back in this investigation.
Right. And there were 2 Democrats who voted against that subpoena. Is that correct?
All Democrats.
2 Republicans. All Democrats. Democrats forced the vote. Oversight had not done anything with regards to this until Democrats forced the vote. And then you had 2 Republicans vote against it nevertheless. Is that correct?
Including the subcommittee chairman, I believe.
Including the subcommittee chairman. So leaders in the committee voted against the subpoenas. Now they're taking, and so this is why Americans might be worried about whether they're going to be forthcoming. Now, Chairman Comer, this resolution would give you, and only you, the power to decide what information in these documents is redacted or withheld. Is that correct?
Well, we're trying to do this in a bipartisan manner. Our staffs are communicating. I think, I hope Mr. Garcia would agree. I think our staffs, he's new to the job, and I think our staffs are working together really well, and hopefully we'll continue to work well. Like I said, I want this to be bipartisan. I don't want members of the committee, and members of the committee haven't been making the accusations that members of the Rules Committee have been making that, this isn't bipartisan. We want this to be a bipartisan investigation. We want to get the truth, and hopefully we'll do that. And you're trying to, I feel like, create a false narrative here to say that the Trump administration isn't working, they have been turning over the documents. And I mean,
So
I
what
feel
we've
like
heard-
we're on a pretty good roll here.
So, Chairman Comer, I appreciate that fact that you said you want to work on a bipartisan
Mhm.
basis on this, but the resolution does not require you to consult with the ranking member.
The only thing that's going to be redacted are names of victims.
Does the resolution give the ranking member any role in approving redactions? And if you want to be bipartisan, would you be willing to accept an amendment to? give the
I'm
ranking
making
member-
a pledge to work with Mr. Garcia. Hopefully, he'll keep Mr. McGovern and Mr. Raskin out of the room, and we can get some good things done in a bipartisan manner.
Well, a pledge is a wonderful thing, but an amendment that actually puts it into writing would be great. Would you be willing to accept that amendment?
I think the resolution's good, and hopefully we'll put it out in a bipartisan manner. And if we need to use that as a basis in court to get more documents, we'll do that.
Okay, so you're not willing to actually put it in writing that you will, that the ranking member will be consulted before you approve.
I guarantee that I'll consult with him a heck of a lot more than Elijah Cummings and Carolyn Maloney consulted with me when they were chairman of the
I'm not
committee.
asking about past, I'm asking about what this is. And this is the problem. And the reason why we're concerned about this is, Chairman Comer, I've read accounts of you describing yourself as a Trump man.
As a what?
Trump man.
Trump.
I'm a Trump man. You said
Well,
I'm a Trump man.
I mean,
Yes.
I
So
support the president.
you support the president, and this is why it would be important to have in writing the bipartisan nature, because we want there to be bipartisanship, so that it is not a.
I want it too, but
so
you
it is
all
not
aren't
a-
making a good case
I was
up here. But
speaking.
I'm hopeful that Mr.
Chairman
Garcia is going to
Comer, I
see
was
past
speaking.
the behavior of the
Chairman Comer,
Democrats on the
I was
Rules
speaking.
Committee.
Madam Chair, Chairman Comer, I was speaking. And I think that it is important that we have people looking at these docs that are not a Trump man, so that we can make sure that everything gets responded to, because right now we haven't seen it. And that's why we want to make it the law of the land. We
Look,
want to make sure that all Republicans vote on the Massey-Connor resolution, so that they can say, we want to make sure it becomes available to everybody without it going through any process of redaction. I think that's the key.
Ms.
It's good to
Ledger.
have your investigation, but it's good to have other things too.
Ms. Ledger Fernandez, do you want to vote tonight? Would you like to vote tonight? They're going to call the vote at 20 minutes after. And so I don't know if you want to finish before I'm going to
At 20
make
minutes
a
after, I think
recess.
I'll be done before 20. I
I'm
think I
gonna-
have less than 40 minutes.
I'm going to call for a recess in about 3 minutes so that we can go vote.
Okay.
Okay.
I wanted to see if there was anything else that the ranking member wanted to add to this discussion.
And I think the only thing that I think is important is all Republicans who support transparency and accountability should support the Thomas Massey resolution. I think it's clear. It puts everyone on record. One would actually be a law versus a resolution. And again, we're happy to support any resolution or any effort to support transparency. And I think the same should be said for the other side of the aisle in support of this resolution, which is bipartisan.
Right. We can do both.
We can do both.
So if we can do both, I look forward to everybody on this committee doing both, voting for this and voting and signing on to either an amendment or the discharge petition. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Ledger Fernandez. We were warned that they will close the vote after 20 minutes. I don't want anybody to lose the chance to vote. We do have members who have a conflict right after the vote. So we're going to delay coming back for a little bit so that those members can get to the other meeting where they have to vote. But for those members who do not have to go to the other meeting, I ask that you come back at about 7:20 and we will proceed. And then those of you who cannot be here will take your place when you get back. We will reserve your time for you. Okay? I think it'll take us to about where you want to be. Thank you very much. 7:30.